Okay, welcome everybody, both people who are online and people who are in the building here. And this is for the August Planning Committee. Right, next I believe we've got a little Judy would like to make a comment at the moment.
Yeah, we're off. It's all right. I managed to sort everyone else's out, but yes, Julie Reader-Sullivan. I'm the Assistant Director for Planning and Growth for the East area of Somerset. This is a reminder to all the councillors, please complete the questionnaires that are in front of you and please put your name on them. This is part of the planning review process that was agreed by the Constitution and Governance Committee. We will be doing this for a further, I think it's further 2 months after this, because it was for a period of 6 months. So please, if you can make sure you do those, they are all being put together so that we can look at all the issues and feedback to you later in the year. And members who are planning agents or observers or representing, I've given you all a copy of a questionnaire which is similar, but is for yourselves. Please, can you complete it? And there is a basket on the table at the end. If you could put it in there on your way out, that would be fabulous. The more feedback we have about the processes, the more opportunity we have to look at what works well and where we could do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Before we move on to apologies, I have one more other thing that I would like to highlight, is that we have is being deferred is the application number 28231084, which is land at Quarry Lane, Lyle Mendip. So if we have anybody in here who has got an interest in that one, it is being deferred today. Thank you. Next, we move on to apologies. Well, the only apology I actually have is from Councillor Alex Wiltshire, who is unfortunately detained elsewhere. So now we have to move on to the meeting, the minutes of the previous meeting. I just have to find those. Okay. But please bear with me a moment. I'm having a little problem finding it. Ah, here we go. Okay. Everybody ready? Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Page 16. Page 17. Page 18. Page 19. Page 20. Page 21. Page 22. Page 23. Yes, Helen.
Thank you, Nick. I have sent out some amendments I'd like to make, but given that it seems that I've got to do these one by one, I'm going to just cut them down. So I'm not going to ask for all of them to be made, but I think my last 2 points, which are on page 23, in the middle of the page, it says, in the committee discussion which followed, the following points were made. And this is about the 25 houses in Frome that we discussed at the last meeting. And it's the last 2 bullet points that I'd like to change, please. So the last ones should say concern about the cost of running the air source heat pumps and the noise emitted. That's the penultimate bullet point in the sort of middle of page 23. So I'd like to propose that amendment. Can I say what the second one is, or do we have to take each one in turn?
Let's take it in turn. So do you have a seconder, Helen?
I don't know. It looks like I
Would
haven't.
anybody like to second Helen? Okay, thank you. I think Claire, yeah?
I'll read it again. It basically, I want it to say concern about the cost of running the air source heat pumps and the noise emitted.
Okay, thank you. So Claire has seconded you. We need to vote on this. Everybody in favour? Anybody against?
Can I point out that Edric Hobbs wasn't at the meeting?
It's carried. Thank you.
And then the last point, which I think is the most important one, is that it transpired that all the land contamination tests have not yet been done. And that's often used as a reason why they reduce the amount of affordable housing on a site. This was great in that they wanted to give us 30% affordable housing, but the officer did say that should the land contamination results come back and that the land was contaminated, they may put in a further planning application with a reduced amount of affordable housing. So I'm trying to summarise that all in one bullet point. So I'm suggesting that we put concern about land contamination, comma, which, if found to be a problem, might lead to viability issues for the developer and result in them reapplying for permission with fewer affordable homes. And I think it's important to note that because that may well happen.
Okay, yeah.
The seconder again for that.
Yes, you will need a seconder again for that one, please, Helen. You'll second it.
No question.
Oh, a question. Hold on.
As these are matters that come subsequent to the meeting, can they be called into question as accuracy of the minutes? That's my concern. I just feel that if the minutes either in front of us is either correct or it isn't correct. I mean, it's all interesting stuff that Helen has raised and stuff we need to know, but what we're talking about here is accuracy of minutes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just on that,
I'll just
and
pass
Councillor
them
Kay
on.
may want to come back. My understanding was that the amendment that's proposed was in relation to the debate that took place at the meeting and a comment that was made by the officer at the meeting. So, I mean, again, it's a matter for members to decide whether they feel the minutes as they are fine or whether the amendment adds to them. So I don't think it's post the meeting.
No, it was asked by Michael Dunk. He asked about viability issues, and then the officer mentioned that it would have to be a new application.
Yeah. Okay, Helen. Thank you. Thank you, Martin. So we need a seconder for your
You could second me since.
for your proposal to change the minutes. Okay, seconded by Susie. Okay, thank you. What page was this one on?
Sorry, that's the last bullet point in the committee
Yeah,
discussion.
23. I was just checking, make
It's in
sure
the
we've got
middle
it
of page
written
23.
down. Okay, thank you. Okay. All those in favour of the amendment, of the changing, sorry? Right. And all those against?
None.
None. So that's carried. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to page 24. And page 25. And page 26. And I think that is it. Okay, thank you. So we'll sign those.
We have a proposer and seconder for the minutes
Yeah,
as a whole.
yeah. So can we have a proposer for the minutes? Helen, thank you. And a seconder, please. Susie again, thank you. It's good to have Martin here by my side. All those in favour?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And anybody against? No. Okay, so we're fine. Thank you.
Sorry,
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I
Martin?
I wasn't at the last meeting. I presume I'm not entitled to vote on the matter of the minutes.
No, I wouldn't vote if I was you.
No, fine.
Thank you. That's okay. Right. Let me see. Where are we to now? We've done apologies. We've done
Declarations of
declarations of interest is what we're up to now. I've got it back again now. Okay. Anybody with any declarations of interest? No. Okay. That's fine. Yes, thanks. Public question time now. So the chair, yep, we haven't had any public questions. So then we will move on to the applications. And that will be to start with number 6, which is land at Main Street, Walton. Please. Well, if you'd like to put the put it on the screen and fire away.
Hello, my turn now.
It's your turn.
So let's have a go. Right, so this presentation relates to land off Main Street in Walton. This is an outline application for 6 dwellings with only the means of access to be determined at this stage. So matters of layout, appearance, landscaping and scale will be determined at the reserved matters stage. So the red arrow on this slide just shows the location of the site of the A39, sorry. It's just here, so it's a bit slow, my little arrow swirling round. So it's an open green space between the residential dwellings at Higher Farm here to the east and Sunset View on Bramble Hill to the west. This image just shows the site in a bit more context. So the red line shows the development limit of Walton. And as you can see, the site is just outside this area to the west, where that red arrow is indicating. So this is the indicative site layout plan showing how 6 dwellings could be accommodated on the site. The dwellings are shown in orange, so you've got 4 here and 2 down the bottom here. The existing access and track are proposed to be upgraded as part of the proposal that's shown in the blue. And the proposal also involves adding a pavement to the west of the access, which is this yellow bit here. And an uncontrolled crossing facility, so basically tactile paving just up here to the north. So here are just a couple of photos of the site. So the first few shots show views looking across the A39 towards the site from the pub opposite. And then the next few shots just show views across the site from the rear towards the A39, which is the one on the left. And then we've got a shot towards the neighbouring properties of Higher Farm and then Sunset View on the other one. So it's a bit of a quick presentation, but hopefully this has provided a useful summary of the site and the application. For the reasons outlined in my report, I'm recommending that the application be approved as a departure from the development plan, subject to conditions and a legal agreement. The legal agreement will secure septic tank upgrades to mitigate the nutrient load of the development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I'm sure everybody paid good attention. Now we'll move on to the speakers. We have one objector, which is Mr. Robert Collins. And I'll just remind you, you have 3 minutes, okay? And we will be strict.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Robert Collins. I'm a neighbour who shares access, which forms part of this development. And it was, I wasn't actually in the presentation by the planning officer, didn't even mention our property at all. I'm speaking to raise an objection to this planning application for the construction of 9 dwellings. There are a few points specifically on which I wish to raise an objection. Firstly, the access is already used by 4 dwellings, with a further dwelling already given planning permission, but yet to be built by the applicant. So therefore, I'm confused that Somerset Highways have not raised any concerns to this proposed access on a semi-blind bend where traffic is regularly speeding through the village well above the speed limit on a regular basis. I personally have close calls every time I exit this access, which forms part of my driveway while trying to pull out onto the A39. There was a serious 3-car accident here back in April this year, resulting in the road being closed for accident investigations for some 10 hours. The construction site, which is due to commence shortly opposite this proposed development at the Walton Gateway of a further 9 new dwellings, will only add to the dangers whilst exiting this proposed development. The site is also outside the development limits of our village, and the parish council have already lodged an objection to this development in regard to this and other issues. Regarding the environment, the Bat and Wildlife Survey dated September 2018, of which forms part of this application, does not relate to this application and only refers to the owner's previous planning consent for the conversion of an old agricultural building on adjacent land. This survey fails to mention any of the affected areas, including mature trees, which will be affected by this application. It also fails to mention the presence of bats, which can be regularly seen in this area during the evenings. Walton is a small village of approximately 500 houses. In the last 3 years alone, 44 new homes have been granted planning permission, with many of these already completed. With this additional 6 number dwellings, that would bring the total to 50 new homes, a growth of 10% to the village in just 3 years. I feel that our village has already absorbed its fair share of growth, and we are already witnessing a strain on local schools and amenities. The number of houses which I've mentioned above does not include an additional 37 homes, which are proposed in South Close Walton, which are seeking further approval. On these points, I object to this planning application. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Very good. And within the 3 minutes. Okay. Next, I believe we have Helen Moore, who I believe is the parish clerk. Is that right? Yeah. Thank you, Helen.
Good afternoon. The concerns of the parish council cover the following areas. The development is outside the development limits of the parish and will erode the character of the village by removing a green area at the western end, and this could also set an unwelcome precedent. Mendip District Local Plan Part 1 identified Walton as a secondary village with a requirement for 40 homes over the plan period. As at March 2017, 54 homes had either been completed or consented, and a proposal for further development outside the development boundary of Walton should therefore be considered much less favourably and refused. The planning application for the development process the planning application for the development proposes to use an existing access onto the A39, which is Walton Main Street. This is already difficult to use due to the curve of the road, and any increase in traffic has the potential to increase the hazard. A housing development for 9 homes with a new access road and the reopening of a public house has been granted permission for opposite this development site, creating 4 junctions, Bramble Hill, Whitley Lane, Walton Gateway, and this one within a very small space. This needs to be taken into consideration. The proposed development does sit just within the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. However, data from the speed indicator device and the auto speed watch system illustrate the speed limit is often not adhered to. The development is for family homes and the pavement to access the village facilities is on the opposite side of the A39. This is a major hazard despite the lowering of the curbs and is detrimental to the use of walking or cycling to reach the local facilities. A biodiversity gain commensurate with the proposal has not been illustrated and cannot be considered as being in line with policies within the Mendip Local Plan Part 1. The Natural Environment Act 2021 has made changes to the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006 in respect of biodiversity. The duty to have regard to biodiversity has been reinforced so that councils must consider what they can do to conserve and enhance biodiversity. This development does neither. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. That's very good. And I believe we also have Councillor Ros White, who's the divisional councillor for Wharton, who would like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to repeat an awful lot of what you've already heard because it was clear and succinct, the objections. But there are two things I would like to say and really press on. One is the highways. If you look at policy DP9, it very clearly says avoid direct access onto a national primary or county route. Now, A39, just for those who don't live in the area, is the only and the key road between the settlements of Glastonbury Street and the centre of Mendip through to junction 23, and we know that there is a lot of development going on in junction 23, the proposed gravity site, the proposed the existing major Hinckley development, which is the largest building site in Europe. So this road is carrying a significant amount of traffic already, something which cannot be avoided for many of the HGVs. And therefore, I do think that adding further development, direct access onto this primary route is a mistake. And secondly, I would like to point out that it is outside the development limits. And we must take development limits really carefully and sensibly and think about them all the time. It's all very well saying it's just one more small development, it's near to a community. But this continual sprawling of our individual villages is a mistake. And I think, again, this is a step too far. We do need to get that green area and the gap moving forward. And there's already been significant development on the opposite side of the road. And I really do think that adding to this is, again, a failure. And one thing I will just add, since one of the other speakers mentioned it, is that we do have environmental concerns, the lack of biodiversity on this particular project, etc., inappropriate and not fulsome reports. And so, again, I very much support the Parish Council's objection to this. And I would say to the Planning Committee, please think about these three issues. There is a very good reasons for you to object to this development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ros. Before I move into the members and speaking, I think it would be apt at this time to ask the highways officer, who I believe is online, to give us their opinion, please. Are you there, Emma?
I am, Mr. Chairman, yes. Good afternoon, all. Did you want me to give it a general response to the points raised, Mr. Chairman, or was it anything absolutely specifically that you wanted me to cover?
A general response, please.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go back. I'm coming to you in a minute. Yeah. It's okay. I brought you in before the applicant, but I should have done it the other way around. But that's fine.
I can go and then come back. That's not a problem if you want to.
Well, yeah, that might be sensible if we leave you for a minute. Hold on, just in case. Okay, if we have the applicant, Mr. Stephen Bainbridge.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee, for letting me speak today on behalf of the applicant. And thank you also to the officer for a very detailed report and presentation. So, as we've heard, Walton is a secondary village. It has a housing target which is expressed as a minimum and not a maximum. This demonstrates that it is a sustainable location for housing development. This isn't an application for housing in an isolated location, detached from built form and key services. This is an infill site on the A39, which is located immediately adjacent to the development boundary. The proposed development will provide a pedestrian crossing, linking it to a pavement which runs continuously into the village core. The proposed homes would have access to all the same services, amenities and public transport as the rest of the village. It is therefore a sustainably located site. The council currently cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. As such, the policies which strictly dictate housing shouldn't be located outside of the development boundary are considered to be out of date. Instead, we apply what's called the presumption in favour of sustainable development, i.e., is this a sustainable location for new homes which has got access to those key services? It does. Also, the application must be approved unless the harm of doing so significantly and demonstrably outweighs the benefits of the scheme. There are no objections from any technical consultee, including to ecology, drainage or highway safety, which I'm sure we'll hear from Emma Meacham. Your officer has addressed why, in this case, the site being outside of the development boundary cannot be considered a significant material consideration. The other recorded objection relates to the impact on amenity, which your officer explains is acceptable and a matter to be reconsidered at the reserved matters stage when layout, scale and external appearance are to be determined. There's a recommendation of approval from your planning professional, subject to conditions and a legal agreement which we accept. The applicant is a local person proposing small-scale housing with only 6 homes. Based on this size, it will likely be of interest to a local small-scale developer, providing construction jobs in the area. As a small site with limited infrastructural constraints and a ready-made phosphate solution, it will likely be built out quickly, providing homes in the community and helping the council to redress its 5-year housing land supply deficit. There will also be a net reduction in phosphates, which is a major issue affecting the Somerset Levels and moors, and there will be biodiversity enhancements in accordance with the conditions which are to be imposed by the officer and in line with your ecologist's advice. Members, there are a number of benefits deriving from the scheme and no harm identified which would significantly and demonstrably outweigh them. As such, we respectfully request that you approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bainbridge. Apologies for keeping you waiting for a couple of seconds. Cheers, thank you. Now I would like to bring in Emma from Highways. If you're there, Emma, please.
I am still here.
Thank you. If you could give us your general opinion.
Certainly, yeah. Taking into account the comments that we've just heard, I would highlight the fact that the comments from our Highways office were given to the planning department in 2020. So the accident that the gentleman referred to in April, therefore, wouldn't have been taken into consideration. And although such an accident is very unfortunate, to say the least, one such accident cannot and is not considered to show a pattern of an inherently dangerous piece of highway. There are no other recorded personal injury collisions in the area to suggest that would be the case. The comments received from various speakers regarding the speed of vehicles in the area. This is unfortunately a police matter. The site is subject to a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, and it does require, the access does provide the required 43-metre visibility in both directions, as required by a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit highway. My only other point would be to suggest that the number of properties currently served by the access, plus these 6 proposed, would not be considered excessive when taking the speed limit of 30 miles an hour and the visibility into consideration. Therefore, the Highway Authority wouldn't be able to object to this proposal.
Thank you, Emma. I think you've clarified a few things there for the committee. Okay, so we will move on to the committee members now. Who would like to be the first one to speak? Benty. No, he's keeping an eye open for me. Benty.
Thank you, Chair. I do have concerns over access. I had the misfortune to cycle back along this road last week coming back from full council because I took a wrong turn, came up the hill and ended up on the main road. It's busy, it's dangerous. I've ridden on it more than once and not seen traffic abide by the 30-mile speed limit at all. There's the flashing sign as you approach from the west coming into the village. Much of the traffic was doing between 40 and 50 miles an hour. Now, I don't know if that indicator is set to knock off the speed of 50 because I know some are, so boy racers can't see how fast they go through it. I don't think it's a sustainable site, and I think the traffic comes through there far too quickly. And I know in the past it's been mooted to try and get a bypass for Walton and Ashcott, which isn't going to happen in the near future. We haven't got the money. I don't think it's the right place to continue to develop, particularly as it's outside the limit of development at the current time. Thank you.
Thank you, Edric. Came in a little bit quicker than I expected. Benty, you will be next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that I share Councillor Hobbs's concern, and also the Parish Council and Roswijk and the applicant or the neighbour to all this here. And I know for a fact that the Highways has got many things they can say, and there is a lot of reasons why they're saying what they're saying. I also thought it would be nice to know that the gentleman, Mr. Collins, that he actually share the entrance to this area where these houses are going to be. That was not mentioned by the officer, and I think that should have been said by the officer. That would have sat better. But I have got to say that based on this here, I've got to be against it, because we cannot keep on having traffic running into, and all there is material damage. Because all of a sudden there will be a fatal accident, and I am against this application because it's not the right place and it's not the right time.
Thank you, Benty. The next one on my list is Helen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the report. When I first read it, I was actually quite pleased to see that you were thought forward, and you quoted DP7 and said that you're going to put a condition in there saying that you want to have, really high insulation standards and get the developer in future to, possibly consider air source heat pumps. In fact, I think the design and access statement might say that, and solar panels. Oh, that was great. You also thought forward about estate layout and lots of other things that you've put in the conditions, which I thought was great. However, when I started to look online at the planning portal, I could not even see a report from Highways. I've just checked it again. I cannot see a report from Highways at all. Then I had a look at just as a sort of a passing remark about this one being built out across the road, and there was a new site layout plan, which I don't know if you want to put it up again if you've got the new one, but it showed that there has to be visibility displays on the opposite side of the road as well. So you've got a development on the opposite side of the road for 9 dwellings coming out completely opposite this one. So there's going to be 6 dwellings plus the existing 4, so that's going to be 10 dwellings. So you've got there's basically both of them coming out onto a busy road. There's going to be quite a lot of traffic coming to the busy road. So I echo what other people have said about the Highways problems. In addition to that, when I started to look at it, it's building on agricultural land, which I'm a bit concerned about, because particularly I'm going to ask about in the next one. But does anybody know? So I've got a few questions. Does anybody know what grade agricultural land that is? The second thing is, it does seem a bit unfair that they've had 54 dwellings already in Walton by 2017. That's what one of the speakers just said. Also, as I understand it, an ecological report is only valid for 3 years. So if an ecological report was written for the development opposite some time ago, I think someone said 2018, one of the speakers, that means it's no longer valid. So you actually need to have a new ecological report. And I suggest that if we don't refuse this today, that we should defer it and make sure that we get another up-to-date ecological report. The other thing I thought about with, I don't know if we can see the site layout, please. The 6 houses going to be built. It's quite interesting that a lot of developers, when they could squeeze 10 houses on a site, they don't, because they don't want to provide affordable housing. If you have 10 houses on a site, you have to have 1 affordable. So we've got 6 houses on the site. We haven't got a map on the screen, though I've requested it twice. 2 of them are 2-bed houses. 3 of them are 3-bed houses, and 1 is a 2-bed house. Okay, so we have got at least 1 2-bed house, but that is not a reflection of the needs that we have in the district, or presumably the needs in the village. These 2 4-bed houses will be bought, I suppose, by people outside of the area. So I am starting to now move to think against this. Oh, and last of all the conditions that we've got, which I suggested were really good. One of them, the officer suggests that we can't do, which is to condition them. If you go along the road, you can see quite a lot of new buildings that have been built in a very grey stone, similar to the Blue Lias. So it's similar to the old buildings like the pub, etc. And the officer is saying in the report on page 36 that she can't condition the new buildings to have the same stonework so that they fit in with the village. If we are minded to approve this, I would like to see that condition added, please. I'm still neutral on it at the moment. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Helen. I'm going to refer to our legal advisor, Martin, in a moment. He wants to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, two things, members. Firstly, just to remind members that this is an outline application. So you're looking at the principle of development of 6 houses on this site. You have none of the details of that, save for the details of the access. So things like materials and the size and the mix of dwellings will follow as part of the reserve matters if outline planning permission is given. So just to flag that up. Secondly, there's been discussion around the highway safety issues. You've heard from the highway officer. In terms of sustaining a potential reason for refusal of the application on highway safety grounds, my advice to you is that would be very difficult, given that you don't have the technical evidence to support such a reason for refusal if you got to appeal. So just please bear that in mind. And the agent has already raised the issue. Sorry, the third point, the agent has already raised the issue about what we call the tilted balance, is that because we don't have a 5-year housing land supply, if you are minded to refuse the application, you need to be satisfied that the impacts of that development significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So it is a higher bar than you would normally have in terms of the planning balance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Martin.
Chair, can I ask a question about what grade agricultural land this was and whether we were giving up grade 1 or 2 agricultural land? Does anyone know?
Does anybody have the, I'm sure it's in the report somewhere, isn't it?
No, it's not in the report.
Okay, I'm sure that'll come forward at some stage. Don't worry, Helen. I'm going to move on now, and I'm going to bring Claire in for her question.
Thank you, Chair. So it's the notorious A39. That there's a reason there was a battle for a bypass there. So I will echo Councillor Hobbs' comments. My in-laws live in Walton forever. They've been there. I note what our legal advisor says, that they don't seem to have the data, but I know anecdotally about lots of incidents on that road. And my question is about the uncontrolled crossing that was mentioned in the officer's report. It gives us a few more details about that, because my question is, how do you cross the road there? Because when I'm turning right, coming from street side to go to Small Chase, the little estate there, Small Moor Chase, you can't turn right unless the traffic lights are red or somebody slows down. They're usually going too fast to slow down. It's very hard to cross that road. And if it's uncontrolled, I would be a bit nervous and ask what, about how the families are going to be able to cross the road. So that's my question. But a final point is about the development. It's over the development area, and that to me is really important because we're going to keep doing this. How can we not do it sometimes and then do it other times? We need to be consistent. So I think it's we have to outweigh the benefits. So 6 houses. I mean, how much difference is that going to make to kind of break that rule, to set this precedent that we're always going to be building outside of the development area? So back to my question, it's just about how will they cross the road when it is really, really, let's be practical and real, it's really difficult to turn right driving, let alone if there's no control on that thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, is there does anybody who'd like to reply to Claire?
In terms of the crossing the road, well, there's the tactile paving crossing point that's been put in, and I have to say, when I went out to site, it is a busy road. I accept that, but I managed to cross the road without the crossing in place, so it is possible. But
I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying it's like there's a reason there was a bypass battle for it and why it got considered to have a bypass. And it's only money that has meant it hasn't. It's because it's extremely busy. And has been mentioned, there's going to be even more of a build up on that road with the gravity site. It really genuinely, honestly, it's really difficult to go across that road. And because we got one example of you saying you could cross the road, I don't think that really sort of takes away from the point I'm making. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on next to Adam.
Well, thank you, Chair. My question was again about the crossing that Claire Solly just mentioned, in that there has to be a safe and satisfactory way to link the site by all means, apart from other than the car. And my main concern is that the crossing is the bare minimum. I've seen this in my own ward. Developer will offer the bare minimum of a tactile crossing, as in you change the pavement a little bit so allow people to know they could cross there. But there's nothing at all to stop the traffic. Is there anything to stop a better crossing, like a pedestrian island or a zebra or pelican crossing being constructed there, apart from the financial obligations that the developer would have to make towards that? Is there any reason why that couldn't be proposed? Because I think it should be with a development of 6 houses, in order to get people safely across a busy road. Because I am concerned about that. Is there anything to stop a better crossing, which actually stops traffic or enables people to cross halfway at least at a time? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adam. We're going back to the officers now to answer your question. I also believe there's an answer to the land quality. Yeah.
Yeah, one of our officers kindly just checked, and it's grade 3, which is good to moderate. So it's not the best versatile land as defined in the NPPF.
Do we have an answer for Adam, or should we bring Emma back in now to add to the conversation? Are you still there, Emma? Highways? Yeah.
I am. Sorry, I'm also in darkness. I do apologise. The weather's changed outside. Technically, there's nothing that would be stopping an alternative. There we go. Thank you. An alternative crossing being put forward. With the details to hand, I couldn't tell you whether or not it passed a safety audit, because obviously that's not been put forward and therefore it hasn't been audited. The land on the south side of the road, of the A39, at the access, there is a large swathe of highway land. So there is the potential to potentially put an island in, although there are cost implications thereof, which would go to the applicant.
Okay, thank you. While you're there, Emma, I'm going to just pop in a little question. Coming back to Claire and her original question, I think the problem is the volume of traffic that goes through that area. And then if a car pulls up to turn off, it's going to can cause long tailbacks. There is nothing that we can do to sort that issue, because it will be bad. I know. Well, I know the road.
The only thing that could be done to solve issues similar to that would be the introduction of a right-hand turn lane, but for a proposal of this size, that just wouldn't be reasonable.
Okay, thank you, Emma. That's very good. I'll let you go again for a moment. Next, we move back to Helen again.
Thank you, Chair. I'm feeling that we might be moving towards a deferral that asks for them to come back with a highway safety, some highway safety measures. That can then be judged by our highways team and put on the planning portal so we can actually see it. Plus a new ecology report, which also looks for mitigation and not just around biodiversity, not just phosphates, because everyone's getting very obsessed with phosphates. And that's what all the ecology reports, two of the ecology reports that we're considering today, two of the reports we're considering today just focused on phosphates. Someone else may wish to put forward a proposal to refuse it. I understand that. But also the other thing I'm concerned about still is about what is sustainable. So I've just looked up again the Brundtland report. It came out in 1987, Our Common Future. It's a United Nations report, and sustainable development was then defined as development that does not compromise future generations, and that includes their sort of life support system. This has been used by the planning industry, and I call it an industry, to mean something completely different. If you say something is sustainable enough times, you know, people kind of start to believe it's sustainable. I don't agree. Please use your own judgment on this. It is a judgment call. It is not something that you can define and pin down. We had something a few months ago, which was a concrete works on a beautiful greenfield site. I actually voted for it because it was going to give like loads and loads of jobs, but it was described as sustainable development. It is not sustainable just because it gives a load of jobs, right? It is not sustainable just because it provides 6 houses and adds to the clientele for the village services. Make your own minds up about what is sustainable. You've got to also think about the transport links, and this is going to be quite a car-dependent development, and lots of other things as well. So just because the agent or the officer concludes that it's sustainable, please make up your own minds about that. All right, thank you. And that is not a proposal yet, because I just want to see what other people might think about approving or refusing.
That's absolutely fine, Helen. Thank you for your contribution there. Now we've got to move to Edric.
Chair, Tess would like to come in first before I speak.
Yeah, just one quick point, thank you. Just in terms of sustainable development, you take it right, use your own judgment, professional judgment, but it is defined in the NPPF. So there is a definition of sustainable development in the NPPF, and that is obviously what the officers would work to achieve those aims.
It's still a judgment call at the end of the day about a balance, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, can we move on, please? Edric.
Thank you, Chair. Can we let Barry speak first? I've already spoken. Barry hasn't spoken, so take it out of order. Barry, go next, please.
Thank you, Edric. I do agree with Helen's, not definition, but discussion about sustainable. Sustainable doesn't mean something goes there and it stays there forever. Sustainable means we're building something that we can live with and add to and produce things for the future. Just because you build a house today to the latest regulations, that's not sustainable. We can't keep building houses here, there and everywhere. And I know Walton tolerably well. It's a very long village. The agent did say, well, these houses will be at the edge of the village and everything is in the village. Well, from the edge of the village to in the village, you probably need a car to get there anyway. It's not a thing that you can do by walking. So that in itself is not sustainable. And anybody who was at the LCN meeting last night knows that probably roads and the state of the roads are at the top of the requirements within this county. Walton have been denied a bypass. So by definition, they must have a lot of traffic to have that sort of solution put forward. And I'm sure the highways lady is quite correct when she says there's 43 metres vision in either direction. If the traffic's going through at 30 miles an hour, that allows you 3 seconds to get across the road, across the stream of oncoming traffic and going in the other direction. If it's coming at 50 miles an hour, which it quite often does, you've probably got 1 second to get across the road or 1.5 seconds. So I think this is a bit, in terms of its traffic and its sustainability, I think it's a bit of a dubious application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. Now, Edric, do you still wish to contribute?
Thank you. I've listened to everything about highways. I've listened to what our legal officers said. I think we do remember this is access we are discussing. It's nothing else. So I'll just put that into the mix again. If we keep developing ribbon development towards the outskirts of villages, I think Barry's alluded to this. Why do we not have to move 30-mile limits further out? If the 30-hour limit is right on the edge of the village, then the traffic, we know what speeds are on there. Traffic speeds are, none of us are saints. We've probably all gone into 30, we've seen the sign flash, think, oh, flip, put in politely, I now need to slow down. Once it flashes, you're doing 40 odd, and then you roll off the speed as you come towards it. We've probably all done that. I've done it, even though I've cycled through there and people come zooming past me coming into it. So should we not be duty bound if we're going to extend villages outside permitted development? Should we not be duty bound to go to the highway team and apply for an order to then move the 30 limit an extra couple of 100 metres to the west of the development further away? I think if we're going to accept houses and expand villages, we at least need to do things to try and make it safer. I appreciate it's down to the police to police these things. We all know with current restrictions on budgets that you very rarely see policemen or the camera guys or camera women, let's be gender neutral, doing the job. So at least can we extend 30 limits? I'd like an answer from highways on that. And even if there's a contribution from a developer who, after all, when it comes to development, is going to make the benefit and the profit from it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Edric. Emma, are you still there? Can you give Edric a reply, please?
I certainly can. As I'm sure most of you are aware, the changing the speed limit requires what's called a traffic regulation order. It is a separate legal act than the Planning Act, so it may or may not go through. I would just like to point out that regardless of whether or not the applicant agrees to apply for a traffic regulation order to move the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, you would be best served determining which way you'd like to go on this application, regardless of that traffic regulation order, because it may not get approval. So you shouldn't be saying whatever option you'd like to go for, subject to the moving of the speed limit.
Thank you, Emma. I think that's cleared that one up a little bit. Now we've got to move on. We've got Claire next.
Susie wanted to speak because she hadn't spoken yet, but so could I go after, please?
Thank you, Claire. I was just quickly going to say there isn't much point in having a boundary line for permitted development if we're just going to go outside of it willy-nilly, number one. And number two, given the answer that Emma just gave us, really it should be a prerequisite that that before us being asked whether we want to allow something outside of permitted development, that a regulation order for the change of speed comes, alongside or just before that. Otherwise, we're just all heading into problems. And anybody who has ever been near that road, Claire's spoken about it a lot. We all know what it's like driving along that road. It is not a nice piece of road to drive on. So I can't imagine it's nice to live next to, or for children or young people, or in fact, anyone to try and cross. And it isn't funny at all.
Okay. Thank you, Susie. I believe Martin would like to come in again quickly. Legal advisor.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly going back to this issue of development limits. In normal circumstances, development limits are the policy. Yeah. But because you are in this tilted balance situation where you don't have a 5-year housing land supply, just saying that you're going to refuse a development purely because it is outside of the development limits will not cut it in this scenario because of the words that I quoted earlier. So if in terms of refusing an application, and this is a departure application, it is going to be contrary to that part of our development plan, because if permission is given, it is outside of development limits. But to refuse an application, you need to apply the test I mentioned earlier. Are there actual harms arising from this development that are not outweighed by significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the development? That's the test you've got to have in mind. So just relying upon your policy in this scenario, my advice is that would not be sufficient.
Thank you, Martin. We'll move to Claire now, who I thank for being so polite and allow other people to go first. Thank you.
I would like to recommend refusal on that. It is outside the development, which I just heard, but plus the safety, the harms on the safety, being able to cross the road, it not being adequate for there's no, it's not controlled crossing, and I just don't understand why Highways is not seeing any issues with that. I really don't understand that. So I would like for those 2 points, when by harms is life, does that include people's lives? Yeah, so public safety, is that, so I would like to recommend refusal on that case.
Okay, I'm coming back in now. So you're proposing that we refuse. Okay, I've got to move on to Benty now, because we've got to get you a seconder as well. You haven't got a seconder yet, Claire. Oops. Yes, Benty, your turn.
Thank you very much. I would first of all say that I will second Claire, Councillor Scully's proposal that it goes for refusal. And I will do that because defer something is only going to bring the problem back in a month's time, 6 months' time, and there's no point in that. Plus, it's not good for the developers, it's not good for anybody. And I think that where human lives or limbs could be at risk, that outweighs everything, because that is the most important thing. So that is also my reason for yeah, it's gone. I've gone back to Denmark. Sorry about that. For refusal. Yeah, exactly. And I also believe that it is no good we are sitting here and are spending all this time on something that we all know is actually not what we mean. So deferral, no. Refusal, yes. And I'm seconded.
Okay, before we look for a vote, and I'll give everybody else a final thing, we're going to go back to Helen for one comment.
I just want to say that anyone that knows Frome, there's a big development behind Sainsbury's and McDonald's, and local people know that there's queues going into McDonald's. The 200 houses were coming off the same little roundabout, and they were given approval, and Highways did not make a comment. I'm not sure that they realised that there were queues going to McDonald's. All the local people are absolutely shocked. I still get sent photographs of queues going into McDonald's saying, how can this be a route into this? So sometimes I think if local people know better, have the confidence to go against what Highways are saying. Right? I know that what Martin said is that we might not have, that if it goes to appeal, that might be difficult to argue. But if the appeal inspector does their job properly, they'll go and look at the site and they can make an assessment as well. So Damon Houghton taught me that if you're going to refuse something, you need to put in as many things as possible, because one might get chucked out, but the other things might still hold. So I would say that if we're going to refuse this, to add to the reasons, not just for highway safety reasons, but also that an up-to-date ecology report was not presented to us, and also that in our view as a planning board, it is not sustainable development on balance. right? That because, and we might even want to say, given the amount of housing that this village has already taken, you know, if these 54 houses, and maybe put that time period in. So I would say that if we're going to refuse this, would you mind, as the proposer and seconder, adding those other reasons in as well? It will bolster it. Yeah. Okay, so do I need to propose that as the reasons for refusal?
Through you, Chairman. At the moment, the proposal is to refuse the application for two reasons. Firstly, that it's outside of development limits, and secondly, for highway safety issues due to the uncontrolled crossing. Now, if you're suggesting, Councillor Kay, two additional reasons for refusal, then there's two ways of doing it. Either the proposer and seconder agree to add those to your proposal, or if they don't, then you can suggest an amendment.
Agree.
But they're nodding, so I'm guessing that they wish to add those.
I'd just like to add that I think it's restrictive to say that we're refusing it on highways ground just because of the pedestrian crossing. I think we need to say that we refuse it on highways ground in the round, because we've got this one opposite that's going to be coming out. There's 9 dwellings there as well, or something.
Okay, thank you. For now, Helen, can I move on again? I'd like to move to Simon, I believe, who wishes to speak.
It's not working. That's working, thanks, Tessa. Just on the ecology point, members, again, you'll see from the date of the application, it was submitted back in 2020. The reason why it's only just come to you is because of the phosphate impact and the time that it's been taken to sort out a mitigation scheme. So just so you're aware, when the application was submitted, there was an ecological survey that would have been in date, because you are right, Councillor Kay, if something's more than 3 years old, technically we wouldn't have validated it. But when it was submitted, it was acceptable. And also, just again, so you're aware, the ecologist, the council's ecologist, has obviously reviewed the application, and the conditions that you see in the report pack are their recommendation. So again, in terms of defining your reason for refusal, clearly what we're here to do is advise you on selecting reasons which are defendable and which are robust and justified. In terms of that one, we'd probably urge that you recognise the comments from the county ecologist and recognise that if planning permission was to be granted, there's a suite of conditions there which could actually control the concerns that you've got.
Can I just ask if that was an ecology report for this particular site or the site across the road? Because that's what I heard or read somewhere.
I think, again, Anna will perhaps provide some clarity on that, but the county ecologist has reviewed the application proposal for this site and has obviously suggested a series of conditions which would be robust enough if yourselves, as the planning board, wanted to grant planning permission, or if an inspectorate appeal also wanted to grant planning permission.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Helen, for your extra comments there. Edric, I believe that you have some comments you'd like to make.
Thank you. I'd like a counter proposal, please, to the one that's already before us. I've listened to everything we've heard from legals and from the highway team in relation to extending speed limits, which we can't do because that comes outside planning. And also I've listened to Martin's comments about access, etc. So I would actually like to propose we do defer this, and I'm looking for a seconder pending improved road safety. So I'd at least like to see, again, what Claire said, I'd like to see them provide an island rather than just a tactile pavement. So I think that would possibly aid slowing the traffic down. Listening to everything we've heard, I think we'd be on sticky wicket if this went to appeal. Although I know Damon always said that just because you might go to appeal isn't a reason to refuse or approve something. I'm looking for a seconder that we defer this pending the developer coming back, or the applicant rather, coming back, although it's at outline stage, with a proposal to put some road safety infrastructure somewhere in that road. Thank you.
Thank you. Your proposal has been seconded by Barry, so that's good. So Before we go, Claire, you would like to say something?
My only concern about deferring for highways is I think they've made it really clear that they think everything's swimmingly fine with that road. I don't know what will change their mind.
Yeah, but I'm asking for the applicant to come back with a scheme whereby they put maybe a traffic island in, which should aid crossing the road and hopefully or possibly aid slowing the traffic down on that entrance to the village.
Yep. Martin, our legal advisor, would like to come in again.
Sorry, just about procedure before you go to the votes, Chairman. At the moment, the first proposal that was put forward was Councillor Sully's to refuse the application, and there are now 4 reasons for refusal, which I can run through before we get to the vote if you need, Chairman. There's the proposal now from your Vice Chairman, which has been seconded, but in terms of procedure, we will vote first on Councillor Sully's proposal. If that is carried, then that is the end of the matter. The application stands refused. If that proposal is not carried, then you move to the proposal put forward by your Vice Chair to defer the application. Okay.
Right, thank you, Martin.
Martin, could you run through the 4 reasons again?
Helen, can you go through the chairman, please? Sorry. Now, have you got a question you would like to? I will ask Martin to go through the reasons shortly. I just wanted to make one comment, though, that I think that Claire, when she was making her comments, she was not necessarily referring just to pedestrians. She was referring to the difficulty with turning in from that side of the road and the inconvenience it will cause all the way back through. So I think we should bear that in mind as well. There's different things here. Okay, Martin, if you'd like to, before we go to the vote, is there anybody else who would like to speak? No? Yes, Helen?
I would just like to reiterate the 4 reasons, please.
That was my next move after I just checked that nobody else wanted to speak. Okay, thank you. Right, Martin. So we're going to go to a vote, but Martin's going to read out the reasons first. Thank you.
Okay, Chair. So the proposal is that the application be refused for 4 reasons. Firstly, that the development is outside development limits. Secondly, on highway safety grounds generally, in terms of the access and the crossing and the impact on traffic passing the site. Thirdly, the lack of an up-to-date ecology report. Yeah. And fourthly, that given the amount of houses that the settlement has already taken, that this development is unsustainable. That's what I understood from the debate, Chair.
Thank you. I think that sums up really what I'd heard. I'm sorry, Susie, you'd like to add something?
Sorry, I don't know the gentleman's name at the end here with glasses on. Simon. I thought he just said that the ecological report is up to date or is in time. So we can't object on those grounds if he's just told us it's fine.
Well, this was what was proposed. It's the proposal before you. So if members don't feel that is something that...
Claire didn't say that, did you, Claire? But it was Claire that proposed.
She's then subsequently accepted those 2 additional reasons.
It's a matter for members.
I'm happy to withdraw that one if Claire and the seconder will accept that. Yeah.
Okay, so you're withdrawing that particular one. So we're sticking to the 3. Is that correct? The 3 reasons. Okay, everybody clear? Yes, right. Okay. All those in favour of Claire's recommendation to go against the officer recommendation. Does that make sense? All those against?
4, Chair.
It's carried. So the application is rejected. Thank you. Right. Right, members, would you like a comfort break now, or would you like to wait till after we've dealt with the next one? Would you like it now? Okay, we'll have a quick 5-minute comfort break. Okay, ladies and gents and members, we're about to restart, where we're going to move on to the next one, which is by Nikki, but Nikki's not here today, so this is agenda item 7. So I think Tessa, you're probably taking it.
Yeah, thank you. So this is an application for land at Newtown Lane, West Pennard, and it's for an outline application with all matters reserved except for access for the erection of one 4-bedroom house. So similar to the last application, this application is just outside the housing development boundary in here. So the development boundary is edged in red. So this is the application site, which again you can see to the edge of the development boundary. It is on agricultural land, and in response to Councillor Kay's question, it is lower quality agricultural land. The one of our officers has just checked for us, it's grade 3. So this is the agricultural land in here, and this is the dwelling that it sits next to. And it's adjacent to off Newtown Lane. So this is the application site and the proposed, well, this is an indicative block plan. So as I said, it's for access only. So this is the proposed access. And this plan here just shows how a single dwelling could be accommodated on the site. But as previously referenced, it is only securing access at this stage. So these are some photographs of the site. So this is looking south into the site, and this is looking west towards the village. Again, this is looking down towards the site just in here, and looking east of the site just in here, and again looking west. So that is all the slides. That is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions identified in the report, and also subject to a legal agreement to secure the phosphate mitigation, which relates to upgrading of a PTP and another property within the catchment area. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Tessa. I think you've done a good job there. And so we now move on to Mr. Michael Golf, I believe, who will be speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee. This application, as you've said, is for outline permission with the matter of highways access being reserved. And as part of this application, it has been demonstrated that the highways access that is proposed does meet the highways requirements. The road that the property fronts onto is 30 miles an hour, and during school times, that speed limit reduces to 20 miles an hour. And the visibility displays have been clearly demonstrated to be the 43 metres that the 30 mile an hour speed limit requires. In addition to demonstrating the safe highways access, this application, we've also provided current ecological reports, which includes biodiversity enhancements. We've done nutrient neutrality, we've done stormwater management, and in effect, this property does join the development limit for the village. It is outside, but it is immediately adjoining it. The agricultural land has been said is grade 3. It's a minimal loss. The applicants farm something like a further 50 acres in the immediate area, and they will continue to farm it in a traditional style. And therefore, this small loss of this property can be mitigated through the applicant's good work for improving the rest of the environment on their land. You have to ask what is the harm, and hopefully the reports that have been provided mitigate for any planning harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Golf. That was very interesting. Can I ask Emma from Highways to come in, please, just to confirm that Highways have no objections on this one?
I don't think I've ever been needed so much at a planning committee. Yeah, no problem at all. Highways don't object to this application. We did originally send it to our standing advice, but I have spoken to Nikki regarding it, and her interpretation of the standing advice document is absolutely correct. Visibility displays, etc., are all fine. There would appear to be, although the internal layout is indicative at this point, there would appear to be plenty of room inside for parking and turning. So therefore, Highways wouldn't have an objection.
Thank you, Emma. I think that clarifies that bit just for any members who may needed it clarified. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move straight into members. I think Claire, you're the division member. Would you like to speak first?
No, but yes. It's difficult. There are some objections, and the parish council have objected. That was a very useful response from our applicant just then. It's difficult. It's outside the development, but it's just, isn't it? It's only just outside the development. It's not like the A39. So I'm on the fence. Am I allowed to? I find it quite difficult, this one, but on balance, I think there's a strong case to support the officer's recommendation at the moment. But I'm going to listen to what my colleagues say on the committee, and I'm open to listening to different views on it to see how that will make, aid my understanding and deliberations on it.
Thank you, Helen. As I'm a neighbouring division holder, I would like to take the unusual step of making some comments here. As I know this area extremely well, it's opposite, the site is opposite Church Lane, which any of you know West Pennard. I hope some of you have been to visit. It would be good if you had. And then it goes around. And realistically, where this planning application is cited is just, it's really infill. Whatever else we say, it's sort of infill because it's on the end of the houses that are already there. I can see no real problem with this one whatsoever in my own mind. And me and Nikki don't always agree, but on this one, I tend to agree with the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you. Right. Helen, you're next.
I probably set more store on agricultural land and food security than others might. And even if it is grade 3 agricultural land, that is a bit strange actually, because the parish council said it was best and most versatile agricultural land, which normally implies it's grade 1 or 2. But if it's grade 3, it still can be used for market gardening and other things like that. So I think there has to be a really good development if we're going to use agricultural land. This is quite, again, it would be great if we could see the site plan. It is a very big 4-bedroom house. It's not like you could actually fit 4 houses on that space. So to me, we've got to weigh up what we're losing here. So that's one thing. The second thing is that it says that there's going to be extra, it's not a very permeable site, so it's going to be difficult to use permeable paving or anything like that. Any extra, well, there will be, it says in the report, there will be extra impermeable areas of the site. The soakaway and sustainable drainage system, it's not easy. It has to go into the second stage of the SUDS system, and it's going, because it's got clayey soils, and it's going to be using ditches on the land within the applicant's ownership. I just wondered if the applicant was actually a farmer, that if they've got fields around there. That was a second thing. And I wanted to ask also, once again, there's no highways response on the planning portal. I looked for it. It says highways response, and what it is the letter that was sent out to the highways asking for response rather than the highways response itself. So we've got nothing online for us to look at ahead of the meeting. It looks as if a hedgerow's got to come out in order for visibility displays because it's kind of on a bend. So the hedgerow's got to come out, and there's a suggestion that, again, all the ecological statement is all about phosphates again, very little about the actual hedgerow. And lastly, it's going to go in opposite the War Memorial, and we have some of our development plan policies are about keeping distinctiveness, like a distinctive look of a village or of a particular landscape. And I'm concerned that this person is going to have their driveway coming out opposite the War Memorial. I don't really think that's appropriate, personally, to have something, a new big 4-bed house, just because someone can afford it, coming out opposite a War Memorial, taking up a lot of agricultural land. So I'm actually moving against this one for all kinds of reasons, including the loss of hedgerow.
Okay, thank you, Helen, for your comments. I'll come back on a couple, actually, if I may.
Chair, just may I interrupt to let you know Emma Meacham would like to come back online.
I didn't quite catch that. Emma, yeah, if you'd like to come back in before I answer a question, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It was just to clarify the comment that made there by Councillor Kay regarding a lack of highway comment. The response that Councillor Kay refers to is our response. On the top of that letter, it will say that standing advice applies, as I mentioned in my previous comments. That's our substantive reply on lower level highway applications. And due to it coming to committee, Nikki and I have spoken about it in advance of this meeting. Just wanted to clarify that that's what the standing advice is.
Lovely.
And that document is available on our
Helen.
website.
Thank you. Yeah, I was also going to come back to you, Helen, on one of your comments, where you were doubting whether Mr. Creed is a farmer. Mr. Creed is a farmer. I can definitely confirm that to you. His family is.
I was asking if he was a farmer because he's got land for the drainage.
Yeah.
So he's kind of a farmer developer type person. Yeah.
He's not a developer as such. That's a bit of an overstatement. Mr. Creed's family have farmed in that area for hundreds of years. Okay, thank you. Edric, I think you're next.
Tessa,
Or Tessa, you can come in first.
Thank you. I was just going to answer a couple of Councillor Kay's queries. You answered a couple of them. Thank you. So in terms of land ownership, the site plan shows with the blue line that they do own the adjacent land. So that kind of covers that point. In terms of the agricultural land, on the map that I've just been sent from an officer, it shows that it isn't grade 1 or grade 2. The NPPF talks about recognising the economic benefits of the most versatile agricultural land. You'll see in the planning balance section, the officer does weigh it as a harm. So they are recognising that, yes, there is a harm there, but it's not significant or demonstrable because of the grade of the land. In terms of the hedgerows, if that's necessary, that can be kind of replanted or if at kind of reserve matter stage. And in terms of the ecology report, there has been environmental assessment submitted in a phase 1 walkover report, so that has been done. The ecologist is satisfied. And then finally, in terms of the setting of the War Memorial, that's something I looked at as well with Nikki. It's not a listed building, but any siting of the building at the reserve matter stage will consider the setting of that, which is potentially a non-designated heritage asset. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. I'm sure that's would have pleased Helen there. Thank you. Next, we move on to Edric. I believe you'd like to make a comment.
Thank you, Chair. I visited the site, know the area well, and I'm quite happy with this. And again, this is for access. I agree with Helen's comments about hedgerows, etc., but I think we can deal with that when it comes to reserve matters and we get full planning. So we can condition these like hedgerows be replanted then. As again, this is outline planning application for access only. I'd like to propose we accept the recommendation of the officer. So I'm looking for a seconder.
Okay, Susie got there first. Councillor Harps first.
I was going to say something, but I don't think I need to. You've said it all already. I'd love to second you.
Okay, so our next, yeah, I got Martin over there first. Councillor Dimmery, Martin.
Thank you. Just this is for information. Trees, no comments received. Were they asked for as a point of information? Were they not given, or does that mean that they considered it and didn't feel they had any comment to make?
I think they were consulted, but a response wasn't received, but I can check on the system. That's how we would normally phrase it. They would normally say no objections if they had commented.
And may I ask a supplementary on that? Is that normal as a relatively new member of this committee? Is it normal that if no comments are received, it is assumed they have nothing to say, or have they not presented any?
I think an officer would make a judgment if they felt there was an issue, they would seek those comments and not make a recommendation until those comments were received. So I'm not the case officer, but I would imagine Nikki's a very experienced officer, would have gone to site and actually seen there were no trees. They felt that she could proceed without the tree comments. If there was a mature tree on site, then Nikki would have definitely not proceed without those comments.
Thank you. I sort of asked that question for future reference as well.
Right, thank you, Martin. I'll mark you down for in a minute, Helen. Next, we have the other Martin, please.
Thank you, Chair. As it hasn't been mentioned, can I just have confirmation that the electrical substation in the field is not affected by this application? Because it wasn't terribly clear to me and it hasn't been mentioned at all. Thank you.
Tessa, would you like to pick that one up?
I'll have to have a quick look. I'm not aware of a substation. So I presume
It's in the photographs you've shown, the officer has shown.
I'd just like to come in there, Martin. I'm pretty sure that Nikki, the officer who has done this one, will have investigated anything like that. She doesn't leave very much. She doesn't leave anything, actually. She's very good.
There's a base of the overhead power lines. Is that what you're referring to rather than actual substation?
That will do. That's what I mean. I'm not a specialist.
Me neither. It's not referenced in the report, but any reserved matters would have to obviously take that into account. And if anything works was needed to that, they'd obviously have to get permission from the relevant statutory body. But I don't think it doesn't look like it impacts upon it from this plan.
Chair, it would just be useful to know if this was something that's part of the land covered by this application, because I feel it is material.
I think it's very good to ask questions. If you don't ask a question, you don't get an answer, do you? So it's good. Next, we've got to go back to Helen.
Thank you. I congratulated the officer last time for thinking ahead for an outline application and quoting DP7 and saying that when the final, she actually had it in the conditions, so that she was asking for sustainable, as in the real meaning of the word, in my view, good environmentally sound buildings with high insulation levels, and I think she asked for air source heat pumps, etc. This property makes no, there's nothing in, I don't think there's anything in the application that they're going to do any of those things. So I just wonder if we can make that a condition again at an outline stage, like the last officer did, to ask for a high quality building that's got the best insulation standards, etc. Secondly, could we ask at this stage, or does it have to be at reserved matters, to make sure that there's a suggestion somewhere about translocation of at the bottom of page 63. It says it may also be necessary to translocate the hedgerow south, which I think means digging up the whole hedgerow with the roots and including all the little critters and ants and spiders in there and moving the whole lot over somewhere else, in which case you kind of save as much of the little wildlife creatures as much as possible. So I wonder if it'd be possible to put that in as a condition at this stage or not. And lastly, I think all officers who've been working on the phosphates issue need to be congratulated for this new way of dealing with the phosphates problem, which we haven't really discussed in this meeting yet, which is to go and update some septic tanks somewhere else in the same catchment area and make it into a proper packaged treatment plant. I think that's a really good idea. But is that going to be pinned down? I was going to ask, is that also something that we need to condition, or is it part of this won't have a Section 106 agreement, I don't think, because it's only one dwelling. So how are we going to pin that down? Because it says on the top of page 21 that the system will be replaced by the owner of the property as and when required to ensure maintained treatment efficiency for perpetuity. So when will that be required? And can we pin down a time when that phosphate, that phosphate solution, so that we're adding to the load this particular house is just going to put foul sewage straight into the existing sewer. So we need to know when another place further down the road is going to be updated to compensate for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just do those questions in turn. So in terms of the sustainability statement, that is secured at condition 9, which I think is probably similar to the previous application, which requires a detailed sustainability strategy statement to be submitted at reserve matters applications. It doesn't specifically mention air source heat pumps, but it talks about maximising renewable energy on site and water efficiency measures. In terms of the translocation of the hedge, that will be covered under condition 8, which requires the application to be carried out in strict accordance with the recommendations in the ecological impact assessment report. And then in terms of the securing the mitigation for phosphates, that is at the end of the report, it recommends approval subject to a legal agreement to secure phosphate mitigations. That will either be a unilateral undertaking or a section 106. So I think those matters are all covered. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not convinced about the compliance with ecological recommendations because I looked at the report and I didn't see a translocation of a hedgerow included in that, but I will go with whatever.
We can double check that, and if it's not included, then we can ensure that that.
Could you do that?
Yeah,
That'd be
that's
great.
fine.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen. I'm just going to go around the room to make sure. Right, Barry, you haven't spoken, so you've already preempted what I was going to where I was going to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If this is an outline planning application with all matters reserved, just for my education, we don't have the ability to tell people to build it to high standards other than already specified in the building regulations, surely.
I would either ask, I think, Tessa to confirm my own feelings on this, and I think it'd be better for the rest of the people to listen as well.
Yeah, I mean, we have a policy DP7 which references sustainability measures, and that talks about maximising opportunities. So we can seek it higher than building regs, and it's sensible to get it at this stage because a lot of those factors will be really important at the very early stages of the design rather than once the reserve matters is in. So it will influence maybe the orientation of the house and things like that. So that's why we would want it secured at outline stage. So that details come in at reserve matter stage. So yeah, it is compliant with policy, that requirement.
Thank you, Tessa. I think that probably helped people. Before we go to a vote, if I go around and make sure that everybody has had their say. So is there anybody here who would like to say anything more on this application? Yes, Benty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that I do not trust, I mean, put it like that, I do not trust that the hedgerow, once it is felled, is ever going to come back. It is, after all, the corridor between many, many areas of the wild nature, if we can call it wild nature. So I do not trust that. And nobody, well, you will be, you really have to argue if you've got to make me believe that.
Okay, thank you, Benty. I'm just going around. Adam, no. Claire, no. Tony, no. Martin, no. Helen, no. Okay, we'll move to the, and Edric? No. So we'll move to the vote. So all those in favour, I believe it was Edric who proposed that we go with officer recommendation for approval. Please raise your hands now. And all those against? And any abstentions? 2. Thank you. So the motion's carried and we've given approval. So that's fine. Thank you. We will now move on to the Millfield applications, which I believe we're taking all 3 in one go. Okay. So if I'm looking, I'm just double checking. No, the only speaker is Helen Lazenby, and you have 5 minutes because you have a lot to speak about. Okay. So if you'd like to come to the
officer presentation first.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. There's too much there. Yeah, officer presentation first.
thank you. Yeah, we'll hear these three applications together. They are separate applications, but it's simpler if it's all heard in one presentation. So the three applications seek planning permission for installation of 6 floodlights at the hockey pitch. Second application seeks permission for the installation of 4 floodlights at the triple court. And the third application is installation of 4 floodlights at the show tennis court. So this is all at Millfield Preparatory School, Edgley Road, Glastonbury. So this is the application site. We'll look at a more detailed plan in the next slide. And this is just show you the context of the site in relation to the Glastonbury tour, which you'll see is an important material consideration as we go through the slides. This is just a closer up site location plan. So this again is the site with the 3 pitches or courts in here. And this is the main built-up area of the prep school. So these are the 3 existing courts. So you've got the hockey pitch, the show tennis court, and the triple tennis netball court, that says in there. And again, this is just in relation to the existing built-up area of the school. Just to show you them in a bit more detail. Again, you can see that they're all very closely located to one another. This is the hockey pitch, the show court, and then the triple tennis or netball court in here. This is just to show you where each application is. So this is where the 6 floodlights will be, and that's the main largest pitch. There'll be 6 floodlights here, which will be approximately 18 meters in height. This is the 4 floodlights at the triple court. Again, there are 4 floodlights in here. The third show courts in here. And again, there'll be 4 floodlights there. So these are the elevations here. So as you can see, they're 18.29 meters at the highest point with the lights on there. So this is some photographs to show the context of the site. So this is the hockey pitch in here, which is annotated by this arrow. And this is just to show the relationship of it with the Glastonbury tour, which is the Grade 1 listed building and a scheduled monument. And this is taken from the applicant's LVIA, looking down towards the site. So again, you can see the existing school and then the hockey pitches, which are, you can see just in this location here, and this is where the lighting would be. There's an existing equestrian centre here, which you'll see on the next slide or in a couple of slides. So this is taken at night. So this is looking, or dusk actually. So this is taken down from the tour. You can see that the lights of the school here, and this is the equestrian centre, which does look quite prominent with the lights in the distance. And this is the current darkness of the site looking down from the tour. And this is the hockey pitch. These are the vehicle lights in here, and this is the hockey pitch here, so that the lighting will be in here. This is at night, so this is just the same view down. And again, it shows where the existing light is, and then the lighting will be through here. This is a slide relating to ecology, really. So this is the existing not built up, the previous developed land. So this is where the pitches are, and then this is the soft kind of grassland, and then these are the hedgerows in here. This is the Lux diagram. I can't see these slides here, but this is the hedgerow in here, and you can see that the lux levels are around here about 400 lux, 300 lux around here. So these are the hedgerows which the report refers to. These are some views in from the road. So this is just looking towards the school site or towards the pitches. Again, these are just the photographs from within the site, just to see the existing pitches. Again, just some more photographs of the existing pitches. So the application is recommended for refusal on 3 grounds. One relates to the impact on the heritage assets, which has been identified to have less than substantial harm, and that is less than substantial in the language of the framework. So the level of harm needs to be considered in that round. The public benefits aren't considered to outweigh that harm. You are reminded that considerable weight must be given to the harm to heritage assets. There's also a second reason for refusal, which relates to the impact upon kind of landscape character, and then a third reason, which is to do with the impact upon ecology, in particular bats. The agent has submitted an extra piece of information, I think, on Sunday, which members would have seen, which is making comments in relation to the officer report, which I can answer if you've got any questions after this. They've also submitted a community use agreement, which officers have considered, but they don't consider that outweighs the harm that has been identified. So it is a public benefit, but it's not considered to be commensurate to a level really to outweigh the public benefits. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Tessa. Now I can go to you, Helen. I've got my things. I'm not so hot now. Okay, thank you. So if you'd like to have your you have 5 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Councillors. My name is Helen Lazenby from Clive Miller Planning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. The floodlighting proposals are intended to enhance Millfield Prep School's sporting facilities for its own students, but also to expand the use of them by external community sports clubs and organisations as a direct public benefit. The floodlights will only be used in dusk and dark hours, only during the winter months, subject to curfew timings, and also subject to individual control to limit illumination to particular areas in use. At the end of last year, we were advised by the Council that to support the grant of planning permission, the application should first be independently appraised by a landscape and visual assessment and a heritage assessment. These reports were commissioned. The detailed independent landscape and visual assessment was based on daytime and nighttime surveys of the site and surroundings, including views from the tour. By contrast, we have been told by the planning officer that no one from the council involved in the preparation of the committee report has viewed the school site from the tour at night time. There is also no specialist landscape response prepared on behalf of the council. Whilst the committee report repeats some extracts of the landscape assessment, it fails to include its conclusion. This states that, and I quote, "Through the undertaking of the assessment, it is judged that the development can be accommodated within this landscape setting without giving rise to significant landscape or visual impacts. The proposal comprises a sensitive approach to development, which includes the careful and sympathetic design of the floodlighting elements and the willingness of the applicant to accept a curfew arrangement, resulting in the lighting being switched off at 8 p.m. The development would not detract from the special qualities of the area, and opportunities have been identified to improve the existing peripheral landscape qualities." End of quote. As such, councillors can be confident that following scrutiny by an independent and specialist consultant, the proposals are acceptable in landscape policy impact terms. In terms of heritage impact, there is general agreement that the proposals cause less than substantial harm to heritage interests. Where disagreement lies is in how that is applied to decision making. National guidance states that where harm is identified, the level of harm within the spectrum of less than substantial should be classified by the council. This has not been done. To summarise the heritage assessment for you, and with the focus on the hockey pitch application, which results in the greatest degree of change, the daytime effect on heritage assets is classed as negligible adverse, which means that the value and setting of the development has a barely perceptible impact on the heritage asset. The nighttime effect is minor moderate adverse, which means that the value or setting of the heritage asset is slightly altered. The tennis court and show court lights have even less of an impact. Please also note that Historic England has not specifically objected to these planning applications. In this situation, policy requires that the heritage impact of each application is weighed against the public benefits. The school is extremely committed to community use of the facilities, which would support all objectives to promote physical and mental well-being, social integration, and the economic development of the area. We have supplied a draft community use agreement, which would ensure that community use of the facilities comes into effect at the earliest opportunity and is maintained long-term. This legal agreement can be put in place prior to the grant of planning permission. In light of this, we are confident that heritage impacts have been properly assessed and that the limited harm found is outweighed by the community benefits offered by the school. The heritage planning test is therefore met. Finally, on ecology matters, I wish to draw your attention to the technical note provided by Richard Green Ecology in May, which has also not been reported in the committee paperwork. This ecologist, in contrast to the county ecologist, has visited the site and undertaken a detailed survey. This technical note explains how and why the survey work undertaken was appropriate to the site conditions, that the proposals are acceptable under ecology-related legislation and would also provide a local biodiversity enhancement. Hence, the correct scrutiny has been given to ecology impacts, and a grant of planning permission would not undermine biodiversity interests. For all these reasons, councillors should have confidence in supporting these applications as being compliant with the relevant planning policy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Helen. Appreciated. Tessa, I believe you wish to come in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. That was a really clear speech. But just wanted to clarify one point in terms of the impact upon the heritage assets, the tour at night, which the speaker's advice is minor, moderate, and giving you a definition of that. I just want to clarify the minor adverse impact is, as the speaker said, change in values of setting of the asset to the extent that significance of the resource is slightly altered. But it also, moderate adverse is defined as change in values or setting of the asset to the extent that the significance of the resource is substantially modified. So it needs to fit somewhere in between those two because it's minor, moderate. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. We're going to move to members, but I'm going to take the unusual step of asking Councillor Kay to read out a statement that I believe was given to you this morning by members of Glastonbury Town Council. Because if you could do that, please, that would be most helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Chair. Sorry, Councillor Cossell. This was sent to me by Lindsay McDougall, that used to be on the planning board, and she's also a town councillor. She say, I think the crucial points about this application are that the site is very visible from the tour. She has attached some photos. You may be able to work out which green patches they are, which are similar to the ones we just saw. It looks like the light intensity is more than another pitch over in Street, which lights up the landscape at night, is very much visible from my bedroom window here in Glastonbury, 2 miles away, and is apparently only 200 lux. I don't understand the next point she makes. She says at between 600 and 1200 lux, I think that's what the proposal is suggesting. The effect on the landscape is described as moderate averse, i.e. change in values or setting of the asset to the extent that the significance of the resource is substantially modified. I'm afraid I was going to ask a question about that because I don't really quite understand that. Due to the famous landmark tour from which visitors survey the landscape. The impact on this view has not been sufficiently mentioned in the applicant's LVA. I think she means LVIA, Landscape Visual Impact Assessment. It is, however, as Councillor Hobbs indicates, mentioned in the heritage statement and impact assessment, which gives an idea of the light impact. I'm sorry, I'm actually a bit confused about this. I would point out that the light scene photograph in the heritage report might be misleading, as the lighting on the pitches will be much higher light intensity than household lighting and street lamps. It's not really misleading, it was just showing what we had already, I think. There is no doubt in my mind these floodlights will be very visible from the southern Butley Road and eastern A361 from Shepton approaches to the Tor Glastonbury. The northern and western approaches are shielded by the Tor itself and the Weariall, how do you say it? Weariall Hill Ridge. I do acknowledge there is some public benefit in that Millfield students will be able to hold winter sports activities or matches in the early evening. The wider community, I'm aware that Millfield, the secondary school part in Street, already offers Saturday athletic sessions to the public, other schools, but I'm not sure what else. The email below outlines some uses at Eggardley, I don't know, and states there is a draft community use agreement which needs to be firmly established prior to permission given, in my view. I've only learned about this application being discussed at planning board today. The information went out, blah, blah, blah. There's a question mark there about whether the parishes are being told about things coming up planning board. So main points, earlier switch off at 7 p.m. as requested by town council, not by 8 p.m. as suggested by the applicants. Clarification ray light intensity compared to existing floodlights on street campus and its adverse effects on the heritage landscape. and a proper community use agreement. So that's, she's assuming, I think, if we go ahead, they're the three things, if we approve it, they're the three things that she would like to see.
Okay,
But
thank
I
you,
also
Helen.
have some other things that I'd like to say.
In a minute, yeah, and we'll come back to you. And I'm thankful for you for reading out Lindsay's thing. What I will say is that is actually part of the view of the town council, I believe. So that was the main reason, because she did get in touch with me very early this morning and wished to speak, but it was the wrong. They left it too late. I'm not sure about. Not understanding when it all happens, but never mind. Okay, so next I'm going to go to the two people who are the Glastonbury councillors. One of them is Susie. So Susie, you have the first crack.
Well, I would absolutely support Millfield being allowed to do this. I know that historically, let alone moving forward, they are very generous with their facilities. They have lots of initiatives to encourage people from outside the school to come in and use their facilities. This is a school with world-class sporting facilities. They're one of the biggest employers in the area. If we don't allow them to develop and improve and update their facilities as needed, they will no longer be a school with a world-class reputation for sporting facilities. Their usage in terms of school fee paying parents will diminish. The employment will therefore diminish, and I don't understand why we would want that to happen. Further, I don't think many people are going up the Tor in pitch dark to look down and see what they can see, other than the drug dealers and the people doing bongo drumming, which, you know, actually I'd quite like to light up the whole Tor and have the whole mob arrested, to be perfectly frank. So I definitely support this, and I think not allowing them to do it would be ridiculous.
There you, Susie. Yeah, you covered quite a lot of things there. I think there is a couple of things that are missing. I think the idea of it will be visible when you come from Shepton Mallet on the A361, because the lights are visible there already, the ones that are already there. I'm not sure what time they turn off actually, but they are visible. I find it a bit difficult to believe that they would be visible from some of the other roads that Lindsay has mentioned. Yeah, I still haven't made my mind up. I'm going to wait to see what everybody has to say. I have a general feeling on this one, but we'll wait and see. Okay, I'm going to come back to you, Susie.
I can answer you in terms of the lights that are visible currently. That is the equestrian centre, where for animal welfare, they need to turn the lights on to do a last check, to change their rugs, to feed them. And even just on the equestrian centre itself, if we go back to when we had those hideous floods, they were taking people's horses who had them stranded in fields onto school property. Some of them stayed there for 2 months, completely free of charge. So I think, you know, we need to look at both sides of this argument. You know, there's always a reason. And if animal welfare is one of them, then great. And absolutely, the whole thing of, you know, trying to stay fit and healthy, trying to, that in turn rolling on and helping people's mental health. And also actually the fact that they do encourage others to come in and use it. It's not an elite school, far from it. If anything, it's been called a fee-paying state school. That's what it's been likened to historically. So, you know, as I said before, completely support them.
Thank you, Susie. Put in your own way. I think it's very good. Next one we have is Martin.
Yeah, I just take issue that I did ask Martin, our legal advisor, about whether I should declare an interest, because 18 years ago I worked at Millfield, and apparently I don't. But I'd like that on record so that we know. But I'm Susie, I would take some differences with you on whether it's an elite school or like a comprehensive. I've worked in both, and I think Millfield is very favourable in terms of its facilities. And what I'd really like to know, and I do agree with you to some extent, it does allow its facilities to be opened up. It did when I was at the senior school, but I'd like to know to what extent the community will get the use of this. I mean, are we fitting floodlights so that community can use the pitches between, say, 6 and 7 o'clock in the winter? has there been a clear indication that actually fitting lights would be advantageous to the community, or is it simply advantageous to the school? That's one question I'd like to ask. And I am glad that we do have the height this time. I'd asked for the height of floodlights that were going to be fitted to a lorry depot that we considered 2 meetings ago, and it couldn't be given. 18 metres is significant, and that significantly impacts on neighbouring dwellings or neighbouring areas. And I think that should be, and I think when we get applications like this, we should know how high the lights are going to be.
Okay, thank you, Martin. And I tend to agree with you there on that one. But I will say that, as you probably know as well as I do, the vast majority of the premises within that area are owned by Millfield and are inhabited by teachers. So that's one. Right, next. Oops, next one is Claire.
Small point, really. It said the officer said it was in the Mendip South division. Could that be changed because it's not in the Mendip South division? Is it?
No, it's not in Mendip South. It's in Glastonbury, and there are a few discrepancies on this month's papers, if you've all noticed.
Yeah, I think Nikki actually picked that up and asked the validation team to make sure that doesn't happen next time. So thank you.
Okay, Claire, have you got anything else you'd like to say at the moment?
No, I'm listening.
Okay.
Colleagues.
Okay, so we'll go to Edric next.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to point out, it doesn't matter whether it's a fee-paying school or a reform school. That's not a material consideration. What we're discussing is, do these lights have a detrimental effect on the area? And I believe that they do. If you go through report pack, actually, I'll come off the map of the area. We're discussing lighting of 400 lux, and I think it's got a major effect. It wasn't 6 to 1200, I think it's 402 in the surrounding, the light spill to the surrounding hedgerows, etc. And I think, regardless of the light pollution affecting the view from Glastonbury Tor, whether the drug dealers are bongo drummers or not, people up there will be affected by the light, allegedly. I do think, apart from the light pollution, it will have a major detrimental effect on the ecology of the area. And if we remember, over many applications we've discussed in this committee, both since becoming a unitary council or back as Mendip, we've raised the issues of light pollution via skylights, as highlighted by Councillor White more than once. And I think we'd be really difficult to defend our position on those. We allow this much lighting to go through in open countryside. Thank you.
Thank you, Edric. I don't have anybody. Oh, I do. Dawn.
You sound surprised.
Yeah.
So in 2 of my previous lives, I've been a teacher, a PE teacher, and also a tour guide. So I've taken lots of tour groups to Glastonbury as well. And so I sit in both, heritage and for the sport. I think for me, the timing of up to 8 o'clock at night, I think is important, because if the school wants to open things up, which they do, and they've said for a parents' hockey, that would be really interesting to get people back into sport, but also for touring groups, for rugby practice, and it's only winter. And 8 o'clock is not the end of the world. I think if you push it down to 7 o'clock, it's only really going to be able to be used by the school children. And again, I don't think that anyone wanting to play sport should be deprived of an opportunity to grow on the sporting field, irrespective of how much money their parents have in a bank account. So for me, I think it's really important that we do support this, because I feel quite passionately about young people not being on screens and playing sport. And if it takes them into the early evening, I think that's important. And again, it's only going to be winter when they're going to be on. I know you'll see the polls during the day, but we're not in London. We don't have regulation that we can't block St Paul's Cathedral from 4 places around the city. I think Glastonbury can be seen from everywhere else, and I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think the priority here is for the children to play sport and grow on the sports field.
Thank you, Dawn. You make some very good points. Yes, I've got you down, Helen. You are next.
Thank you. I just want to say that I remember when I first became a member of this planning committee just over 4 years ago, it was like baptism by fire, and we were thrown at the deep end, but we did continue to have training sessions quite early on. And one of the ones we had early on, which I think that maybe might need to be done again, is to explain about this thing in conservation areas and listed heritage buildings and what's what, because some of the new people might not necessarily know that. And so we've got, as I understand it, this is my understanding of when you talk about harm to a heritage asset, there's either no harm or there's substantial harm, or in the middle, it's not called middling harm, it's called less than substantial harm. So although less than substantial harm sounds like it's near the bottom of that range, actually it's sort of in the middle of that range. Right, have I understood that correctly? So then I don't understand how that then relates to the other things that you said, Tessa, about moderate, adverse and all the other things, and what the speaker for the floodlights said about whether it's a mild or moderate. Is that a different labelling system for heritage, different landscape? Is that about landscape as opposed to heritage assets? I've got another point to make, but do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I
first?
mean, that's a very good question. As you said, the NPPF defines harm as either no harm, less than substantial and substantial. Substantial harm really is the loss of the asset. So you rarely will see substantial harm. So the spectrum of less than substantial is huge.
It's a huge range.
Yeah, so I think that the term of it is quite difficult, because I think the reader may think that means there's little harm, but actually there can still be significant harm. So the NPPG says, well, actually, we should be clear where on that spectrum the harm falls. But helpfully, there isn't really a definition of those kind of harm. So the applicant's heritage assessment has used the ICOMOS guidance, and they talk from major adverse through to major beneficial. And we're happy with their assessment of the hockey floodlights, which falls between moderate adverse and minor adverse. And as I read out before, moderate adverse is change in values or setting of the asset to the extent that the significance of the resource is substantially modified. So you're talking a very significant asset being substantially modified. And the minor adverse is change in values or setting of the asset to the extent that the significance of the resource is slightly altered. So between minor and moderate is going to be something like being significantly altered. So there's an acceptance that is the harm to the setting of the tour. The question really is whether you feel the public benefits outweigh the harm, and that is members' planning judgment to make.
So can I ask a question? We are taking all these three together. So are you saying that for the hockey pitch, we've got the higher rate of harm, whereas for the other two pitches, we've got a lower rate of harm, and that there may be a advantage in taking, I mean, I think when we vote on it, we'll probably have to vote for them all separately anyway.
Yeah,
okay.
Again,
right. Okay.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
The harm is different. So the harm is higher for the hockey pitches and it's much lower for the show court, for example. But unless you're going to permit one and refuse the other two, we have to look at the cumulative impact, because we couldn't control one was on and the other one was on. So yeah, the show court is much less harm. So you may argue that there's less public benefits needed to outweigh that harm than there is for the hockey pitches.
Okay, thank you very much. That's clarified a lot for me. All right. The other thing I wanted to say is that the other thing that when we had training early on, is that we were told about something called MyMaps, and I don't know if this has also been lost in the transfer to Unitary, but there used to be this amazing resource covering the whole of Mendip that showed lots of different sort of maps overlaid on each other, like a GIS, and it showed all the areas of conservation, all the listed buildings. It also showed every single application that had ever gone before, and it just showed everything, and you could switch things on and off to look at this thing. I don't know if we've still got that, but in the heritage report, it looks as if there was a picture or a snapshot of MyMaps, and it shows all the different designations around the tour, which I didn't know. So it's got a lot of different designations. So I am a bit concerned about the floodlights and the effect on that. I even heard somebody from the town council say that they were going to apply for UNESCO heritage. Okay, well, it's just an idea for the tour and the Abbey. But anyway, it is important. It's an important thing, and I think that we have got to weigh up the not just the benefits. We've got to, as Lindsay said, pin down this community use thing, but also the economic benefits are actually going to be, as you said, it says in the report actually that the school, this part of the school, is run as a business. So they're putting the floodlights up to actually be able to extend it. It's not just going to be for free community use necessarily. There is possibly going to be a charge. So, you know, there is a business element to it as well. I am concerned about something that Edric said, because I hadn't really understood about the lux levels. I am concerned that it is going to have an impact on wildlife. And some of you may have seen the email that I sent earlier from Lindsay, but I also put in there a picture, because I back onto Oakfield School, and they also have floodlights there. And there is an element of human error sometimes here. The third picture there is one I took at 1:20 a.m. in the morning in June last year. It was a full moon, and I could only just see the full moon because the floodlights were on, and they'd been left on by the caretaker or somebody in June. Why were they on in June in the first place? I don't know. So I think that in terms of, if we allow this to go through, we really must pin down the hours and say, for example, that they can only have it between, I don't know, October and March, when we decide when the winter is. And maybe there needs to be an automatic override which turns it off at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, whichever we decide is the most appropriate. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Very good. Right, we move on to Adam.
Well, thank you, Chair. We haven't talked about wildlife really at all, and there's 3 reasons for refusal for all these 3 applications. 2 of them are to do with the landscape and the heritage asset of Glastonbury Tor and other assets. And the other one is, in all 3 cases, wildlife. It says the county ecologist recommends refusal due to the lack of further survey information to confirm the likely absence of bats, and there's an opportunity to provide information about how light spill can be reduced, but that hasn't been provided. So therefore there's insufficient information to establish whether the bats would be affected, as they're thought to be in the area. So if we approve this application, are we doing so in the face of the council's ecologists saying, no, don't do that, because they're concerned about the impacts on a protected species under the regulations? So that's fairly serious, but we haven't talked about it. So is it possible to clarify the seriousness of that recommendation for refusal, and also how that can be addressed potentially through a condition, if it's possible to do that, and how that would go? Thanks.
I might leave Martin to cover any legalities, but officers do not think it can be covered by a condition. So otherwise they would have suggested a condition. There is some disagreement between the applicant and the council's ecologists in terms of whether bats will be hibernating or whether potentially there will be an impact at that time. If October and March are mild, then they could be foraging at that time. So that's why they've asked for further surveys to see whether they would be used. But without lessening the lux levels, which they need to be lessened quite significantly, our ecologist isn't comfortable there won't be an impact upon the bats.
So in your view, you can't mitigate that in this current application. It's either go against the ecologist's advice and can't mitigate, no further surveys needed.
If further surveys were undertaken and they demonstrated that bats weren't using those as foraging routes, for example, then potentially there wouldn't be an issue, but those haven't been submitted. So we can't get those as a condition, because then if they couldn't adhere to it, then we wouldn't.
Is there time to do that this year, this season?
No. Well, March to October. So potentially they could do some surveys between now and October.
So it's possible to defer it.
Right. Thank you, Tessa. Thank you, Alan. I believe Martin wishes to come in a moment.
Yeah, I think actually Tessa said most of what I was going to say. No, this can't be conditioned for the reasons that Tessa has set out. I think if members are minded to approve the application, this is similar to the discussion we had at the last meeting, the meeting before, in terms of the conservation of habitats and species requirements. And I think if members are minded to approve, you would need to do it on the basis that it's delegated, subject to sufficient information being provided through surveys to satisfy our colleagues in ecology. Otherwise, I think we run the risk of of breaching those regulations by granting permission without being satisfied. Now, I know there's some dispute. You've heard the agent speak about a later submission of a report. But if members are minded to go that way, then that's what I'd be advising. It's a matter for members.
Right, thank you, Martin. Adam, you got any more questions or are you finished?
No, I think that's very useful advice. I'd like to incorporate what Martin just said into any proposal.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. We'll come back to you in a while. Our next person is Susie again. No problem.
I'm just quite confused as to how anybody thinks we're damaging the heritage site of the Tor. Who is going up there in the pitch dark and that their view is somehow damaged because there are some lights? No one's going up there in the pitch dark. So I don't see how the heritage site is negatively impacted.
The applicant's own assessment, heritage assessment, concludes that. So we've agreed with their conclusion. So their own actual experts concluded that there is harm, minor to moderate harm, to the setting of the Tor and the conservation area. So we're just simply agreeing with their heritage asset, the heritage expert. So they're an applicant, Milford's applicant is, Milford is the applicant, appointed the heritage consultant who have concluded that harm. And we're agreeing with that harm.
So, but are they saying visible from the Tor or are they saying the area?
I think the area around the Tor, the setting of the Tor, the peace, the tranquility, the rural nature of it and lighting it and having more suburban form harms that setting of the Tor. And they said that's in their own conclusion. So there's no disagreement. The disagreement is whether the benefits outweigh that level of harm or not.
It just to me seems quite far away from the actual Tor itself for anyone's enjoyment of it, as someone who's lived at the bottom of the Tor for 20 years. So I'm finding that this all just a bit confusing, really, how it's damaging the heritage site. You know, and also just to respond to Helen about the school behind her where the lights were left on in the summer at night. I can't imagine that that would be an issue in a school that's manned 24 hours a day and has a 24-hour-a-day security team. Whereas I think a school, maybe there just wasn't anyone there, so there was no one to go to say, can you turn that off? It wouldn't be an issue in this particular instance.
If members felt necessary, they were minded to prove we could have a condition with automated turn-offs, which would overcome that concern.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susie. Thank you, Tessa, for answering. Next, we go to Claire.
So thank you, Chair. I wanted to listen because this is really difficult, and I think that Susie is giving a very robust view that is appealing, and I could be persuaded by that argument, but there's a couple of things. One, who would go at the Tor at night? I've been at the Tor in the evening, and I think just once, and I think you kind of, and not for any of the reasons that have been discussed so far. I don't play the bongos. And I suppose for the record, I don't do the other thing that was discussed as well. But, you know, the stars, you know, you're with someone, your contemplation, and, you know, people need to take time out. And so I can see, and it's a world attraction, and, you know, and it's there. And I don't think people would not, I think people, I imagine a lot of people do that. But the thing that's persuading me to agree with the officers is that if I've ever disagreed with the officers, which I have a couple of times now, it's not because of what they do, and they impressed me with their level of knowledge and expertise, but I just sometimes come to a different conclusion. It's never the work itself, and I feel like I trust the officers with this. On this one, and I'm not coming to a different view on it, even though I think some of the arguments are very, very strong. So I'm inclined to agree with the officers on this, but I'm sad to do that because I really would like the school to have the opportunity it wants to have, but it's just where it is. It's unfortunate. So I hope that's helpful, but I think I'm going to go with the officers and I'll wait for somebody to propose that. Thanks.
Thank you, Claire. Next, we've got Benty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I'm sorry. I didn't know whether you were talking something very specific. I want to go ahead where Councillor Smart's finished, and that is, I know that when this place was mended, they had sufficient staff here that could go out and make Mendip's own assessment of what was and what wasn't. And maybe that would be nice that Somerset Council had sent somebody out to look at the site and say, wow, if the light really got up, is it really going to be that bad? Go up there in darkness, by all means. I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I go around in Shepton in darkness, and people are saying you shouldn't be doing that. But it would have been nice if the council has sent their own staff out to have a thorough look and then say, this here is fine, or this here we agree with the others. And then I will say that I have fear that if this here does not go through, we are going to end up with Millfield School not being in the area, and therefore a loss of a huge amount of attraction from outside for the school, and also a loss of workplaces.
Come back on that. The case officer and the heritage officer have been to the site and have gone up the tour and looked at it together from the tour and done a detailed site visit. They haven't been up at night time. That's obviously completely out of office hours in the summer, but they've both been up the tour and had a good look.
Thank you both. Helen, you wish to come back?
Yeah, I've almost forgotten what I was going to say now. I think. Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, everybody. Just give me a minute. Well, just to react to what's been said, I don't think that fear-mongering about whether Millfield School will move or not is relevant. And I don't think they are going to move if this doesn't go through. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Again, it comes back to the training. We had, when we were first on the Mendip Planning Board, we had something about conservation. Then we had another session on HRAs, Habitat Regulation Assessments, and how they fitted in with Natural England and all the other things, and how that they worked with the Ecology Service. And I think we're sort of, this is a really important heritage site. And I think that has maybe not been expressed enough, the importance of those things in Mendip's landscapes. But I think for that reason, I would like to go with the officer recommendation and propose that we refuse this, but we add in the thing that Edric mentioned, which is that it's an extra reason to refuse, which is you've said it's refused due to landscape harm identified, heritage harms which are not outweighed by public benefits, insufficient information submitted to demonstrate there would not be harm to protected species. Edric, did you say something about dark skies as well, and the fact that it will affect the rural setting, sort of just dark? I don't know if it's a dark skies area. I don't know, Edric, if you wanted to add something to that.
I think that's all good with the lens.
Yeah, these just to the commissioner, these are my vice chair's comments when we were asked to comment on whether we wanted to come to board or not, whether we agreed with the officer, and I agree with the officer on this one. So, and it's been reinforced by the comments we made here. So yeah, whether we're in a dark sky or not, I think it does have an effect on the nighttime sky.
You think we should add that to a reason for refusal? And if maybe the officers could give us some advice about that, whether it's worth, and also the thing that Adam Boyden mentioned about, it says insufficient information to demonstrate there'd be harm to protected species. It's not just about the information, it's the fact that you thought that there couldn't be a mitigation strategy to protect species. So perhaps we need to say that.
I think it's the lack of information. If the information came in and it was demonstrated that the bats weren't using those kind of routes as foraging routes, then it probably wouldn't be a reason for refusal, but we can't confirm that yet. In terms of the dark skies, I think that's encompassed in reason 1 and 2. In terms of the reason it is harmful to the heritage assets, really is because of the impact upon is the lighting. And just in terms of the reason for refusal, which relates to heritage, if members are minded to refuse the application, that just needs to be amended to confirm it's less than substantial harm, because that's missed out of the wording as reason for refusal. So we would just amend that reason for clarity.
The less than substantial harm to the landscape.
To the heritage assets, yeah.
Yeah. Can I have a seconder, please?
We'll come back. We'll find your seconder if you need one in a moment. First, we must go on to Susie.
Well, it's good that Claire wants to speak, because if she went up there in the pitch dark, I'd like to know whether she used a torch, because I've lived there for 20 years. You would be taking your life into your own hands if you went up there in the pitch dark without a torch. So maybe we need to have something that stops people going up there with a torch, if this light is going to be perceived to be damaging to this particular heritage site. And I also think there are other things in view of the tour, and I think most people at this council will know what I'm referring to, which have more impact on the visual aspect from the tour. And, you know, we all know where we're heading. So if we're looking at, we've got to start being a bit more consistent. Like, if we're really concerned about this heritage site and what you can see from it, we need to make provision for a proper traveller site, so we don't have a ramshackle setup of unroadworthy vehicles that now number 70, where they were 0 5 years ago. So that's number one. And number two, yeah, we need to say no one can go up there with a torch at night if we're so concerned about the light that may be emitting from some sports pitches between the hours of dusk and 7 or 8 p.m, whatever we decide it's going to be, during the winter months.
Okay, thank you, Susie. We've got to go back to, I believe, Martin now is the next on my list.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just, I presume the tour isn't upwardly lit at night. The tower is not lit, is it?
Not at this time. It has been lit in the past.
Yeah, I thought I'd seen it. But that obviously light would distract from that if you were looking to highlight that. I just feel there's too many questions here. I don't know whether or not I can have any answers on this. I'd like to be positive in this, but I'm worrying about the height of the lights and whether or not it's possible to reduce that in some way so it's less intrusive, and also what kind of lights have been considered, because I think the standard sort of lights for the sports pitch is probably halogens, and LED lights, which have low energy and actually are very effective, possibly at the lower level, actually might be much more acceptable. We've got to bear in mind that we're not talking about one application here, we're talking about 3. And so it's going to be quite a big impact with several lots of high level lights with strong halogen light. I'm wondering if it's possible to go back to the applicant and ask them if they considered any other possibilities that would be less intrusive.
Would you like to explain the legalities of that?
Sorry, was that me? Yeah, I think they have had those discussions in terms of the height. The higher it is, the easier it is to control the angle. So actually the light spill is less if it's higher. So actually, I think if you reduce the height, the light spill then may be worse. So although the pole is more intrusive, the light spill is less.
I do know something about it, and you will see the light from further distance, the higher it is. That's really the issue.
Okay, Martin, that was your question. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but a point of order. Are the applicants allowed to answer those questions in this forum?
Not officially,
they're
no.
itching to.
But we could, I'll make an exception if you'd like to come forward and answer the question.
Thank you, Chair and councillors, and thanks for the opportunity to answer those questions. We have discussed it with Nikki White. We had initially discussed reducing the height of the lights, which are proposed to range between 15 metres and 18 metres. They're not all 18 metres. The biggest issue comes is that there are light standards for safe play, particularly with hockey. I understand Craig might correct me on that one, but the lighting standards the lighting that's proposed is the lux level that's the minimum standard for safe play. If the height was reduced, then the number of lights that would be required would have to increase to achieve that safety standard. The proposed lighting is LED. It's produced by Musco, that are international high-level suppliers of floodlights. They are the lighting suppliers for the Butley hockey pitches opposite the senior school in the lower dip. The very, very, very bright lights on the edge of on the edge of street that you can see from the tour are the Strode College lights. They are much brighter than the hockey pitch lights. And the whole point of these Musco lights is that they are LED, they are focused downwards to directly illuminate only the part of the pitch that they need to illuminate, the effect of which is that the glow is extremely low. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, for that extra bit. You had.
Thank you.
Because you would have been entitled to 9 minutes, so I don't mind you popping back in for an extra minute. Thank you. Martin, have you completed yet?
I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Martin. Now we're Claire next.
I'm doing a Helen. Sorry.
No, you're first.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I was going to say now, because it's been a long, useful wait. It was. I remember one part of that. Do forgive me. I do remember one part of it, which was that I think that it reminds me of when you were driving to Wales and you saw that Morrison sign illuminate across the landscape. There was something peaceful about being at night, and then suddenly something just you didn't expect to be there. And is that me? Is that me? Is that better? So I am sort of thinking that is the issue. Oh yeah, but the other thing I was going to say that because you were asking about going up there, but I don't want to trivialize this, but I do think that is the. Sorry, you hearing feedback?
Excuse me, overriding, Roddy. Can we all just check that our microphones are turned off? There's some feedback. Has anybody got a green light on their mic, please?
Yeah, sorry.
Try again, Claire.
Yeah, I just want to make the point that it will really stand out. Oh, is it me? That's not on. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. No, it's not on.
Many things. Too
Yeah.
much
Okay.
technology.
Yeah. So yeah, there was another point, but sorry because I waited, and it's my fault, not the committee's fault. But I do want to say that where I've seen it happen before, a really lovely, beautiful landscape at night, because you get that spatial awareness, and then suddenly there is this bright. Dark skies. Boltonsborough has dark skies. That's probably the important thing. That's a mile and a half up the road. We were asking that question, are there dark skies? There is dark skies in Boltonsborough, I know that. Got there, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Now, we're going to try and wind this one down a bit. We've got, I think, 3 people I've got left on my list, which are Susie first, Adam second, and Helen third. So, Barry. Barry, you sneaking in there as well. Okay, well, we'll go to Susie first.
So I just wanted to simply say, I think we should move to vote against officer recommendation. Thank you. Oh, that is a proposal. Sorry, yes, that is a proposal to move to vote against officer recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Martin's got that. Next, we want a word from Barry, who hasn't said anything yet and wanted to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I never vote against officers' recommendations, but she's not here, so I can do what I want today, can't I? Are we concerned that the tour is going to be lit up by these lights? Or are we concerned when people go up in the dark that they can see these lights? Because we must all be aware of the Yeoman's Quarry, which have got floodlights, not exactly the same height, very high. And all the issues with flood, light pollution, dark skies, they all resolve quite satisfactorily by fiddling about and putting louvers on and doing things to the lights of a technical nature. And people you never hear anything complaining about those lights over at Tor anymore. And I think these lights would be a few lights in the middle of a lot of other lights. And I don't think they're going to hurt anybody at all. And if you want to go out to the Tor and you want quiet meditation, then walk around the other side and look the other way and you won't be able to see it.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Chairman.
I live very close to the Tor and I don't walk up there very often at all. I gotta admit. Right, Adam, you need a final word?
Yeah, it was to say that I'd like to propose to defer this application on the basis that insufficient information is provided on ecology, and to allow the applicants to provide further information and further surveys to clarify the impact on protected species for this. I should have maybe said it before.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Martin, did you want to come back in on that one?
Not specifically on Councillor Boyden's point, but generally just about the process and also the motion to approve the application. But I'll be.
Yeah, I've got one more person to allow to speak. Shall I allow her to speak first, and then we'll come back to you? So, Helen.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I do think that we've had some comments about the type of people that might go up there in the dark. I happen to know someone who runs a building company and goes to Bristol every day and comes back and regularly goes up the Tor different times of the year at about 6 o'clock in the evening. He loves to see the sunset. From sort of a bit like what Claire was saying, the sunset view is going to be ruined because you're not going to see the sunset, because you're going to have all these bright lights coming up because they'll turn them on before sunset. So I just think that in terms of like public amenity and the pleasure that people get from walking around the Tor in a beautiful area, that also has to be taken into account. I don't know if that's covered by the point where you say the landscape harm. I don't know if that kind of public amenity is covered by the landscape harm identified. I just wanted to check that. I don't have a seconder, so as I understand it. Oh, you're all right. Okay, so Edric seconding me. Okay, thank you. But I'd like to have the dark skies thing added because of also what someone said about, I think it was Claire, about Bolton Borough, because it is close by and you will see them, the light pollution. Maybe it needs to just say, and light pollution.
Okay, so we're finished with our chatting, and next I think Martin, you'd like to come in and give us the legalities.
Yes. Firstly, just on procedure. Sorry, I'm getting feedback now. There was a proposal to refuse in accordance with office recommendation, but that's not been seconded. Well, it has been seconded, but that was subsequent. There was a proposal to defer, but that wasn't seconded. However, there is a proposal to approve the application, which was seconded. So that is your substantive motion. If you vote on that and the majority of members agree with that, then that is the end of the debate and the application will stand approved. However, for approval, as set out in the officer's report, there are 3 areas of concern which if the committee is going to grant permission, needs to spell out why those areas of concern have been overcome or are not relevant in some way. And those are, firstly, the habitat regulations, secondly, heritage, and thirdly, landscape impacts. Now, I've said earlier in an answer to a question raised by Councillor Boyden, in terms of the first of those, the habitat reason for refusal, which is on basis of insufficient information. I think if the committee are minded to approve the application, I think the only way we can safely and lawfully deal with that is to say that we are minded to approve the application subject to the submission of sufficient information to satisfy the regulations. Otherwise, as I said earlier, I think there is a risk that by granting permission, without that being satisfied, we're in breach of those regulations. And subject to that, the second reason is heritage. You say, Tessa mentioned that, or advised that the harm is assessed as less than substantial. Now, the test in the NPPF is that if there are less than substantial harms, are there public benefits to outweigh those? And I think from what you're saying in debate, that's the proposers and seconders are saying there are public benefits. As I understand it, that is principally the community use agreement that is being proposed. I'm getting nods, so that's good. So if you're minded to approve the application, that would need to be secured as part of this.
I'm quite happy for your suggestions to be added to the proposal.
Okay, and that's great. And the last, well, no, 2 more points, and then I'll be quiet. The third one is the landscape impact, and on that one, what I understand that you're saying, the proposer and seconder, is that the landscape harm would not be unacceptable and would not be an incongruous feature in the landscape, because that's the wording in the suggested reason for refusal. And my final point is that if you're minded to refuse, then we will need delegated to officers to impose conditions, planning conditions on the grant of permission. And there have been a number discussed in debate, one about automatic switching off of the lights at a certain time, but also the timing. I think that 7 p.m. has been mentioned, 8 p.m. has been mentioned.
Yeah, I think the application was 8 p.m. I think 7 a.m. in the morning, and then the winter months as well. So we could look at those and discuss those with the applicant.
So subject to those points from the proposer and seconder, that's my advice, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Martin. I think I know now. Is everybody clear? Okay, Martin, I wasn't going to take any more questions, but I will.
I'm terribly sorry to drag this out, but we're dealing with 3 applications here.
You're quite right.
And each one needs to be taken in turn. Now, it would be very easy to make a statement regarding all of them. It's going through my mind that if we were to grant the right to do this with one of those surfaces that came up for have been applied for, then the applicant could come back for 2 more. I think one of the applications is a tennis court. Is that right?
Yeah,
tennis
a
is
show court. Yeah, tennis.
Yeah,
show
tennis
court,
is a
which is the least harmful.
and one is hockey.
One's hockey and one's a netball / tennis.
Netball. Okay. Tennis is a summer game. I expect they practice year in, year out, but they do have an indoor tennis centre at the senior school. I'm wondering if we could reduce this to 1 application and see how it goes. And because 3, taking all 3 and issuing the same directives and the same logic to all 3 may not be appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Martin. And the other Martin's going to reply.
Yes, and my apologies. That was going to be my first point that I made to myself and then overlooked it. That the applications, each of the applications needs to be voted on, and we need proposers and seconders for each application. So you're quite right. There might be different, reasons and different decisions on each application. In the order that they're on the agenda, and this is the order they should be taken in the vote, is the tennis court, the show tennis court with the 4 floodlights. It's down to members at how they vote on each proposal, and members might be minded to approve 1 and refuse 2, or approve them all or refuse them all. But that's for each one needs to be considered on its own merits. So at the moment, the substantive motion is for the tennis courts, which is the first one on the agenda.
I mean, I'd like to.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think because we've spent quite a lot of time on this one.
Sorry, can I just say I'd like to make the same proposal every single time if possible.
Sorry, Susie, I didn't catch what you said.
I'd like to make the same proposal that we vote against officer recommendation on each of these 3 separate ones. I'm quite happy to propose it 3 times.
Thank you. Do you have?
And I was trying to get in first and say that I wanted to do the same for going with officer recommendation.
Okay, so if I'm right, then we now have all 3 proposals for acceptance to go against officer recommendation. Are you all proposed and And then we've got Helen and Edric.
I'm just going to say, yeah, I'm happy to second as per the first.
Okay,
item.
so we're clear on that. Okay, that's fine. Right, let's go for the first vote. And the first one is the installation of 4 floodlights at Show Tennis Court. All those in favour?
Yes.
Yeah, this is against the officer's recommendation.
This is to approve the application. We'll be minded to approve. 1, 2, 3, 5.
Okay, all those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So that one fell, unfortunately.
So, Chairman, we need a, excuse me, fresh proposer for that particular application.
I believe Susie is already.
No, this is the tennis courts application. There was a proposal to approve, that has failed.
So
there needs to be a proposal.
Excuse me, Martin. Helen and I think we just agreed to do the same for all 3 applications as Susie has in opposition to it. So we've already done that.
Yes, Vice Chair. I think the point is that we just need to make a decision on the tennis court application before we move to the next application.
Okay, so Edric, Helen, you okay? Right, okay then. So we will go to the vote on this one. All those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show your hands.
Tennis courts.
Tennis courts. And all those against?
5.
5. Okay, thank you. So that's carried. Okay, next we move on to the proposed installation of 4 floodlights at the Triple Court. Okay, so this is proposed by Susie, seconded by Dawn, by Benty. Okay. All those in favour?
Again, this is for approval, Chair.
Yeah, approval.
4.
All those against?
7. 7, Chair.
Right, thank you.
So again, that's been lost, Chair. So there needs to be a vote on refusal of the application.
Okay, so Edric, Helen, fine. Okay, all those in favour of this this motion, which is to go with the officer recommendation. All those in favour?
8.
And all those against?
4.
Right, thank you. Next one we move on to is the proposed installation of 6 floodlights at the hockey pitch. Again, the same proposer, which is Susie, and is Benty the seconder? Okay. All those in favour of this proposal?
1, 2, 3, 4, Chairman.
And all those against this proposal?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Chair.
And now we have to do the same again.
Yeah.
Helen, Edric, you're fine. Okay.
I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Next we go to Helen's proposal, which is that we go with officer recommendation and refuse. So all those in favour?
6.
And all those against?
4, 5.
I think we got that wrong. Okay.
So all 3 applications have been refused, Chair.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So that's what's happened. Thank you. so we can move on to the next. Okay, we will move on to the next one in a moment. Hold on, I know what it is anyway. Okay, so we're going to go on to, this is the one of construction of a driveway and change of use of land to garden. And this is, I've got one down, I've got Councillor Ros White, but I think Councillor Rob White has already left. So we've got the applicant, Linda Dunn.
Officer presentation.
Oh God, yeah, the officer presentation. I'm kind of getting weary now.
Hello. So this application concerns Middle Ivy Thorn Farm in Walton Street, and they are seeking consent for the construction of a gravel driveway from Ivy Thorn Lane from the east, leading to the farmhouse, and a change of use of agricultural land into residential. So you can see from this location plan, you've got an existing access to the east, farmhouse, and the proposed gravel driveway. The application is dealing with the land enclosed by the red line. Again, you can see the application site, its location, and again, it's located in a rural environment. This is a block plan of the proposal, so you'll see that they're incorporating what was agricultural land to form a garden to the north and to the south of the farmhouse and either side of the existing drive. This diagram shows the existing access and the proposal for a gravel driveway north of the existing fence boundary of the field. Site looking westwards towards the farmhouse with the existing access in the foreground. A photograph of within the site showing work undertaken, but the proposal for the inclusion of agricultural land as a garden. And this is looking up into the interior of the site. This access will be discontinued and only used for bins, but the proposal also seeks agricultural land to the left-hand side to be used as a garden as part of the residential unit. My recommendation is for approval as per my report pack. I'll be happy to answer any questions members wish to make.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll move on. I'll put it the right way around again. And we have, is it Lydia, yeah?
Yeah, Lydia. My name is Lydia Dunn from Whiteacre Planning. I won't speak at length. As the officer has stated, this proposal has been devised to provide a new access to serve the farmhouse. The proposal represents an improvement to highway safety given the very poor visibility from the existing access and to vehicle movements to and from and within the site. The farmhouse also has very little usable garden currently, as most of the garden is at the front of the house, and this is currently used for parking and turning. Therefore, the application also includes some enlargement of the garden, most of which is just to the rear of the house, so they've got some back garden. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was quick and short and sweet. You waited a long time to say that. Okay, right, back to the members, and I believe my vice chair wishes to make a comment to start with. Edric?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the applicant for waiting so long. Sorry we kept you for 3 hours. As you see, we debate things robustly. I've looked at this one and I have no problem with it at all. I see it as a gravel driveway. Yes, it's encompassing some agricultural land into garden, but with one of my bugbears being people putting down tarmac driveway, this is just a gravel driveway to give somebody a better, more amenable access to something. I have no problem with this at all, and I'd like to recommend we go with the officer and approve this. So I'm looking for a seconder.
Right, we had, I think Helen had the hand up first to be the seconder. Okay, now if we move on to comments. Who would like to speak first? You have done, yeah, second. I don't count you. Second. Tony, did I see your hand rise?
Still learning. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wholeheartedly agree with what Councillor Hobbs has just said, and I'd like to second the motion to approve. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say there are 3 seconders. I think the official seconder is Councillor Kay, Helen.
I'll defer to Tony. I'll let him second it.
Okay, who else would like to speak? No? No one. Nothing from him. Okay, then we will go to the vote. If we are in favour of the of Edric's proposal, that we go along with the officer recommendation. All those in favour? Susie? Oh, you're saying okay. Okay, let me just see. Who is objecting? Nobody objecting? And you're abstaining? One abstention. Okay.
Sorry, I'm abstaining because I don't feel that we're consistent in our approach. No one's asking what level of agricultural land. Suddenly they don't care. No one's asking about yanking out a hedgerow. Suddenly they don't care. No one's, whatever.
So I'd like to come back on that because I think that is a personal kind of remark.
Okay, Helen, you can come back. We've had to vote, so.
Yeah, but I'd like to come back on it because I believe it was aimed at me. I do usually ask if it's a large acreage as to what the level of agricultural land is, because, but I believe that with the small linear feature going across the landscape, the farm will probably continue to farm the land on either side, and I don't think that this is worth arguing about the amount of acreage this will take up. You're right about the hedgerow, though, and I believe that.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It wasn't aimed at you. If I wanted to aim it at you, I would be perfectly clear and do so. It's a very general terms. Lots of people are making these same
Can I make
comments.
a point of order, please? I think this is going off topic. We've just taken a vote. Jeff, we get back on topic, please. I think we're going to personal
I think
comments
we need
here.
to get back on topic.
I'm explaining why I abstained.
No, that's okay. You don't really need to do that, Susie.
Nick, you assumed I wasn't voting because I was looking.
Because you were looking at your telephone.
Yeah, but I was choosing to abstain.
Could I remind members of the committee,
multitask.
this meeting is recorded for the benefit of the public and we need to maintain professionalism at all times, please.
Okay, that's very good. Okay, I'm just thinking, I don't believe we've got anything else to go. We've deferred the next item until the next meeting or the meeting after, so I think I can wholly declare the meeting closed.
Sorry, did I miss a decision there, Chair?
Yes, Councillor, it was 10 votes for going with the officer recommendation with.
Sorry, I thought you were saying the last item's been deferred.
Yes.
Yeah, the last item.
I missed that.
We announced that at the start of the meeting, Councillor.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, I missed that completely. What was the reason given for that?
What, the Lyle amended one? Yeah, that was announced right at the beginning of the meeting.
Right, I missed that, Chair. So could I have the reason again as to why it's been deferred?
Yeah, I'm sure Tessa will give you the reason. Or Simon?
There was some inconsistencies in the officer report pack, so we just want to make sure that members have got the full suite of information when they take their decision.
Okay, Are we happy? Okay, so we're happy. So we can say the meeting is closed. Thank you very much.